you hear it?
We would like to welcome everyone out to the Highland City Council meeting here on November 7th, 2023. It's an unusual time to be here on the first Tuesday of November. Usually this is our election night, but the governor has postponed that for 2 weeks till the 21st. So we want to welcome everyone out tonight. We will begin our council meeting by having an invocation by Councilmember Kim Rdello, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Brittany Bills.
Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we're so very grateful to be gathered here today as council members, mayors, residents of our city and staff. Especially grateful to be able to talk about things that affect our city and our lives and our families' lives as well. Please help us to have thy spirit with us and to be able to guide us to make the correct decisions. And we say these things humbly in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
And join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we have set apart an unscheduled public appearances. We'd like to just kind of, as we look across the agenda, there might be some here that would like to discuss items that are on the agenda, specifically maybe item number 2A, which is the alcohol survey results. I'd like to just let everyone be aware that during that alcohol survey results, after the presentation's done, we will open it up for those who would like to come up and make comments or questions pertaining to the survey results or things that might be pertaining to the alcohol issue at all. So I'd recommend, if that's what you want to come up and talk about, is maybe to wait till that time, and then we can address some of those and have you come up then. But if there's anyone here that would like to come up and address anything else that might be on the agenda, we do have a public hearing on a land swap that will also have public comment during that time. But other than that, that will be the only other issue, the alcohol issue in that public hearing of a land swap. If you'd like to come up and talk to the council, we just ask that you please come up and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Please state your name. And so at this time, we'd go ahead and we'd open that up now for your public comments, and we'd like to come up at this time.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Doug Courtney, and I'm speaking to you this evening as a resident of Highland. There are 2 issues I'd like to address this evening. The first is the proposed revision to the city's dress code. I'm disturbed that the dress code is being expanded from 3 sentences to 4.5 pages. It seems to add needless complexity, particularly given that it still includes a statement that not all cases can be covered and that employees are expected to use their good judgment. We have recently seen the results of unnecessary complexity. Nobody knew what the city's rules were with regard to the sale of alcohol until the city attorney had to dig in and carefully look at the code. Similarly, by increasing the length and complexity of the employee handbook, we run the real risk that nobody, including those who are expected to enforce it, knows what's in it without careful research. The dress code should absolutely contain some examples, and extending it makes sense. But I think this proposal goes overboard and should be streamlined. The second issue I'd like to address deals with the Utah Code annotated Chapter 11-10, business allowing consumption of liquor on premises, and particularly paragraph 11-10-1.5, which states that a local authority shall set policy by written rules that establish criteria and procedures for granting, denying, suspending, or revoking a business license issued under this chapter. Given the results of the survey and comments made by various city council candidates, it appears likely that the requested change to our alcohol ordinances will be approved. This suggests to me that it's time to begin thinking about and planning for those written rules. The application for a business license may not be far behind any changes. I hope that city staff will begin researching and preparing a draft of the criteria and process so the city can approve them before they're actually needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Hi, my name is Erin Barton. I'm here mostly concerning speeding cars through my neighborhood up in the Beacon Hills neighborhood of Highland. I've done kind of what I can with my neighborhood Facebook group with purchasing little green men to stick in front of my house. And I've also put in a request through the city. I guess the request has gone into the city engineer. I have the request number if you're interested. But my request is twofold. One, to put a crosswalk on Beacon Hills Road that connects one half of the neighborhood to the other. Our ward boundaries recently changed, and now there are an increasing number of kids on the other side of a very busy street, which cars just plow down. Second thing is another stop sign or a way to slow cars down through a through street which has a lot of little kids living on it. The situation has gotten so bad where, like, I've seen a teenager stop and look at that little green man, reverse his car, and then plow right through it. So anyway, that's what I'm worried about.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Aaron, can I just ask, so your name's Aaron. We have our city administrator also named Aaron.
Nice to
Aaron,
meet
would it be Jay? We actually had a new traffic calming put together as the council. We passed it, and how residents, if they see traffic issues, did you submit as part of that saying, hey, we'd like to have traffic calming be looked at in this specific area? Okay, so that was your application. Aaron, did that go through Jay, or is that with Andy?
It's actually Andy. Jeff probably doesn't have anything to do with that. It's really more roads. So Andy, I'm sure, has that application, which means we need to start processing it. So I don't know if Andy talked to you about this, but we're going to come out to your the area that you mentioned and set up some feedback information, right, so that we can start tracking and seeing if we can record what you're observing, essentially, so that we can then apply that toolbox and say, okay, this is the problem we're seeing, so here's the relevant solution.
Okay. Yeah, Joanne Scott replied to the comment on my request.
She's our Public Works Executive Assistant, so she's facilitating that through Andy.
Okay, great. Okay. So I should receive
We will
an
be
update?
in touch. Yep.
Okay, great.
So,
Thank you.
but Aaron, if we're not hearing, so you've put an application in. The process now is that we have a toolbox. And okay, we have these issues. What can we go apply? And that's what we're asking staff now to go look. Okay, what's up as we go up in that Beacon Hills area? Because I recognize that there's a lot of traffic, and you have, like you said, the kids things. So we will look at some of that, and that's why I'd heard something I thought that was coming through. I wasn't sure if that was your application. So it's in the process. I'm sorry, government moves a little slow.
No, it's okay. A lot of it's my first time at a city council meeting, so it's interesting.
Thank you for bringing it to our
Welcome.
attention. Is there anyone else who'd like to come up and address the council?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Name is Bruce Smith, resident of Highland for 7 years, formerly from Kentucky. Last month we had, last month, a debate. Debate's a misnomer. It really wasn't a debate, sadly. It was a forum. One of the questions tossed to the participants was, how do you make a decision? I found that fascinating. The answers I would give in general to those candidates, C+. When you're making a decision, especially in the area of public administration, the first thing you've got to determine is what's the outcome. What is the principles that you have to satisfy and follow? This issue, the hot issue before us right now, is not alcohol, it's not taxes, it's not morality, it's not religion, it's not agency. The paramount issue is, what do you want to have happen to Highland? On one hand, a developer comes in out of nowhere with one goal: to make money. On the other hand, you've got the residents of Highland, such as myself, relatively new, 7 years, that has one goal: quality of life. That's the issue. Alcohol is a misnomer. The survey that was issued was weak. I signed it, everyone else did, but as I did, I said, this survey's weak. It needs to be reworded, and it needs to be investigated deeper. But too late. I signed it anyway. If this law is not overturned, if the refusal to allow alcohol stays in Highland, no one loses. No one. Neither the developer nor the residents. I subscribe to a statement by a wise sage: don't ever take down a fence until you know why it was put up. And if we ignore that, one of the restaurants that'll show up is Pandora's Box. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to come up and make a public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and we'll close our unscheduled public time, and we will move on to presentations. We have two presentations tonight. We have presentation number 2A, which is our library annual report. I believe we have our library board, and that will come up and make a presentation. So we'll invite you to come up at this time. I want you to just make sure you introduce yourself, maybe the board members that you have here, so the council gets to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Kevin Tams. I'm the chair of the Highland City Library Board. This is Amy.
I'm Amy Brinton, and the rest of our board is back here, and Wesley's back there. Lynn can be with us. Would you, and Kim is our city council representative. If you're on the library board, would you just stand up? And let's just give them a round of applause.
You can do that.
All right, let's see if we can. Do you want to? You on the clicker. All right, so all right, we're going to start there. So I'm Kevin Tams. I'm the chair of the Highland City Library Board. The library operates under the direction of the Highland City Council and is governed by the Utah State and Highland City municipal codes. In the making of this report, we are compliant with the Utah State Code and our own bylaws. So let's start, Kim.
Okay.
Or Amy. Sorry.
We're proud to announce that this year the Highland City Library was designated as a quality library by the Utah State Library, earning the Essential Piece Award. Now, this award was presented to just 16 libraries in the state that serve a similar population area in the state of Utah.
The Quality Library designation recognizes efforts beyond annual recertification requirements. We'd like to share with you some of the essential pieces that make the Highland City Library so successful.
The first one is outreach. So the Highland City Library reaches beyond its physical space to provide services to community organizations. This year, we've been able to serve over 1,800 patrons outside the library doors. This is in events like the Highland Easter egg hunt, the Highland Fling Children's Party, and the Arts Council meetings.
A quality online experience is an essential part of our library's success. Close to a third of the library's circulation is now digital materials. This year, we circulated over 83,000. These materials are easily accessible from the library homepage. Information about library programming, including over 300 events last year, is widely advertised online. An interactive calendar makes the programming even more accessible. We also maintain an active social media presence, and we have a web design optimized for both mobile and desktop devices.
The most extensive change this year was a migration to the Koha system. So Koha is an open source library platform. It has some key advantages over our previous system. First of all, there's a beautiful, simpler interface. There's a lot more training available to the staff because it is open source. A lot of things are being made for it, training. And also, we can own our own database.
All right, in addition, we anticipate the switch to the Koha system will save us approximately $25,000 over the next 10 years. So big money savings there.
An essential piece of the Highland Library is its resource sharing. Sorry. There we go. There are a lot of comment card boxes in the world, but the Highland City Library actually delivers. So in the last year, we have fulfilled 95% of patron requests. There were 195 titles requested, 205, and we fulfilled 195 of those.
Collaboration enriches the library experience. We are part of the Northern Utah County Library Collective. Our patrons have access to American Fork, Lehigh, Eagle Mountain, and Pleasant Grove libraries.
And that's at no extra cost. You simply have to present your Highland City Library card to gain access. The crown jewel of Highland City Library is its programming. This year, we offered 339 library programs with a total of over 19,000 attendees.
And if you were here a little earlier, there was one on autism and how to help children learn and different teaching things. So just a little earlier. So this year we hosted a National Chemistry Month program put on by the UVU Chemistry Department, the Highland City Library History Lectures, winter and summer reading programs, a local author day featuring 8 local authors. We held a teens writer group, a tweens writer group, quarterly painting class for teens and adults, grandparent story time, and many, many more, with incredible support from our city leadership. So here you can see our wonderful mayor participating in these events. So thank you.
My kids loved the King and Queen, especially. Highland City Library has also been recognized for offering a variety of innovative materials. This year we added STEM kits and expanded our Yodo player collection.
And Yodo players are the new things that you don't know, so lots of fun there.
Okay, hold it. Yodo. What is, just out of curiosity, what is this do?
So it's a little speaker, and you can put in a card, and it can read Charlotte's Web to you. So a kid could have their own device. They don't have to use mom or dad's device, and they can get these cards from the library and have an audiobook.
It reminds me of the record player I had that would turn a page and you'd be
Right.
Yeah.
Last
A lot
month,
more
we
sleep.
circulated 145 Yoda cards.
All right, great question. The library continues to be financially responsible. We operate under a balanced budget while saving for important needs like new flooring, accessible doors, accessible shelving. The STEM kits this year were purchased with Library Services and Technology Act grant. In the last fiscal year, as a result of our amazing staff, they applied and received over $12,000 in grant money. The Library Foundation is active and working with the community to address appropriate library needs.
A final essential piece of our library's success is our professional development. Highland City Library staff exceeded the state library training requirements by over 50%. Clearly, we have an amazing director and staff.
Their efforts led to a number of key increases this year. We have more patrons than the prior year, more physical items, and our digital and physical circulation continues to increase.
Beyond the numbers, though, are positive patron experiences. One of our 5-year-old visitors has been coming to the library regularly throughout her preschool years. Although she experienced challenges related to a birth defect, she just passed her kindergarten assessment handily. Her mom attributes her progress to their involvement with books and library programs.
The library is essential for 3 nursing students who regularly schedule the study room for online tests, sometimes even before the library opens.
Another special guest is a 9-year-old who discovered our new puppet house. While her parents were meeting with educators in the study room, the girl was able to move her wheelchair into the puppet house and play there for a couple hours. She has since become a special friend to our library staff.
A refugee mother recently presented us with her passport and immigration papers to gain access to the library services. She and her small children enjoy the programming and the picture books each week.
An older gentleman comes in regularly to use the computers, writing several missionaries every week. Even when he moved to American Fork, he came back to our library because the staff had come to know him and he felt at home here.
When we as a library board dream of the library's future, we see a larger library with more programming space for our many special events. Maybe this will be a new building, maybe this will be a shared building with other amenities. Maybe it'll simply be an addition to the existing library. In any case, we are committing to maintaining the quality library system as an essential part of Highland City. And we thank you for your support and for our ability to be here. So, questions for Donna or for us?
Donna, do you want to give a high-level overview of the strategic plan? Because that'll be coming back to City Council next time, correct? In December? Yep.
The strategic plan basically updates the one we had last year. The new elements are the state is requiring us to do a technology strategic plan this year. So there's several items that are related to library technology. We are also required this year to include a community assessment element, which is new this year. So there's some things in there. In the strategic plan, we have the carpet replacement, which we'll be voting on today. We hope also within a year or a little more to also replace the upholstered furniture, because it is also as old as the library building. And we want to continue to grow our collection, which is challenging because our collection is aging and we find ourselves discarding books as fast as we order them.
I have a question. I served a number of years on the library board, and if I remember correctly, library board members are also members of the Highland Library Foundation. Is that correct? Is that still the way it is?
So some of us are. So the
some of you
Highland
are.
Library Foundation meets quarterly to plan fundraising events. They've started, if you notice, there's a vending machine out here that the foundation has put forward. There's also the book fair at the Highland Fling that was put on by the foundation. And basically they provide supplemental income in addition to the tax revenue to be able to fund new book purchases, programming. What else?
Okay, yes. So the question is the library board the same as the foundation? We have separated the two organizations. So there are some library board members that are part of the foundation. There are some people who are part of the foundation that are not on the board. So we've separated those two organizations.
So how is your relationship with the Friends of the Library? Because they've been more active over the last few years.
Our Friends of the Library are tremendously supportive. They do fundraising for programs and smaller projects. Their main fundraising arm is that they sell the used books that are donated to the library. Last year, they made over $8,000 in used book sales, and we've used that to fund some of our programs. A lot of our summer reading prizes are paid for by the Friends, and also other, just occasionally I'll say, Friends, I need something help, and they just say, okay, which is wonderful.
So do their finances stay separate from the foundation?
Yes, both the foundation and the Friends group are individual 501c3 nonprofit organizations, and their finances are not connected to each other anymore.
But they both feed into the library. Okay.
All of their fundraising goes directly to support the library.
Maybe some other questions is, since we have a lot of new council members, or at least, a couple, and maybe some aren't that familiar with the board, what are some of the things, you mentioned a lot of the programs and things that way, what differentiate? We have a library staff that does a lot of things versus what the board would do. What would be some of the things that we'd see that the board's been doing versus I recognize there's certain things the staff's been doing, and that might be a good education for all of us.
So library staff runs the day-to-day operations of the library, and they're paid. We do have some volunteers that work at the library, but the staff of 11, I think it is now, are paid employees. And so they're running the day-to-day. We are involved in renewing policies.
It's more of the strategic side of things, like where are we going? Are we aligned? We're looking 5 years into the future. We're saying, hey, are we going where we need to know? We've been talking about flooring for probably 2 years, 3 years, but because we've been doing that, today we have the money to ask for flooring, and we can pay for it, and we're responsible. We're looking at the future. Highland City's demographics are going to change in the next 5 years. The way we generate income is going to change in the next 5 years. We're actively looking, how are we going to address this? The needs of the community are changing, and it's a partnership. We all come in with different ideas and perspectives, and together we help shape the vision, and that's the best part about the board.
Council, other questions?
I was just curious. Congratulations on the award. That's super
yeah.
exciting. What was the process like to be selected for that award?
Sorry, answer that.
What was the question?
The Essential Piece Award.
Oh, so each year the library submits an annual report, and at that time to the state library, and at that time you can apply for the essential. I mean the library
Quality designation.
quality unit, yeah, library unit, and there are 12 categories, and you have to meet a certain amount of them. And for the last 5 years since I've been director, I've wanted to get the award, and I was always just one short. But this year we made it all, so we made enough. So I was very excited.
That is a great,
Congratulations.
that is great.
And I would just add one of those things that we keep looking for. We look at what makes communities great. And last year we gave a presentation about how libraries economically impact communities. You will see that Highland is better off because we have a library. Our children are better off. Our citizens are better off. We are a better community because we have a library. We need to make sure we take care of that and that we guard this asset because it really is an asset. It's one of the pieces that makes Highland special. Cedar Hills doesn't have a library. Alpine doesn't have a library. We have a library. It's a little thing, but it makes a big difference.
We've been traveling around to Cedar Hills and Alpine cities because a lot of their, in fact, about over a third of our circulation
No,
is
it's about a fourth.
a fourth.
Yes.
Fourth. Our circulation is going to those other cities who purchase library cards to come to our library. And they just expressed a lot of gratitude for Highland for having a library supporting it because their residents really treasure it.
I think as a council, we'd want to tell you thank you. I mean, you know, Scott and myself, I think they call it the troubling years of the library. We go back prior to 5 years. There's a lot. Donna, you've done a great, I think, about bringing environment and showing, I think, a lot of us what a library is supposed to look like. So I think there's kudos there. We appreciate as a board, you guys have, like I said, that strategic looking forward on how to make the library better to help it with Highland. We really want to thank you for all your service that you guys do. I mean, I've seen you many nights. You know, you're here. You know, it's something you serve. Like you said, you're one of our intricate parts of Highland. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll now move on to item number 2B, which is the alcohol survey results. We'll turn the time over to our city administrator, Aaron Wells, to walk through a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I look forward to sharing these results with you and answering any questions that you have. So I wanted to give you a background as to the survey itself. As a reminder, how the survey came about. So we mailed 2 physical surveys per council direction. We mailed 2 physical surveys with unique ID codes to every home in Highland. If individuals happen to have more than 2 people in their family, or if one got lost in the mail or never received it, that kind of a thing, they could come into City Hall to pick up additional surveys, and we had about 100 people do that. When people received the physical survey, there was a link and a QR code very prominent on it because we really did want people to do the survey online just to speed up the results process. And as you'll see later, that really did hold true. We did have a lot of people fill it out online. We also wanted to make sure, as this is a complicated issue, that people understood they weren't just filling something out without having an understanding of the issue. So we did include an information sheet that council and the mayor and I worked quite a bit on to try to make it informative and so that residents understood what they were filling out. Now I broke the thing. Okay, do you want to forward for me, Brooklyn? I don't know what I did. There we go. When it was all said and done, the survey was about 3 weeks long. The city received back 3,423 responses. Of those 3,423, 79% of them were online responses, with the remaining 21% coming from physical surveys, paper surveys. Now, okay, so what does that mean? What does that 3,423 number mean? Is it relevant? So to look at some comparisons among our among the city. We estimate that we have about 12,000 Highland residents, or excuse me, 12,000 adult residents in Highland. So that means that almost a third of adults, filled out the survey and turned it in. If you look at, okay, so what have been some of our recent voter turnout? In 2021, where we had two ballot measures on there, we had a referendum and the parks tax, we received 4,900 votes that year. So that, in comparison, we got about 70% of that turnout for our resident survey. In 2019, which is a more calm election, it was 3 council seats on the ballot, we got up to 91% of the turnout for that issue, or that election, for our survey. And then annually, we do a resident survey. So the largest turnout we've ever gotten for our resident survey is 1,200 responses, which means we've almost tripled that number for this response. So I know we always want more, but truthfully, this is a really good response when you look at some of those other comparisons. And from a statistical standpoint, it's a relevant response as well. Brooklyn, will you forward for me? Thank you. Okay, so if you speak statistics, the result, the sample number has a 99% confidence interval with a 2% margin of error to the population. In non-statistics speak, what that means is, okay, we had 3,400 responses, 12,000 population. Given those numbers, if we would have gotten responses from every single Highland adult, you can be 99% certain that the results that we have now would be the same as those results within 2%. So they would go up or down by 2%, but because of the high number of turnout, it's going to be the same, statistically speaking. Just as a way of information, we did disclude some responses. So we, on purpose, did a unique ID code because we wanted to make sure that it was one person, one survey response. So 81 responses were excluded. They were excluded for things like incorrect ID numbers, so they typed it in wrong, and we couldn't be certain that, as much as we tried to see if we could figure out if it was an easy typo, if we couldn't figure it out, unfortunately, they were excluded. If people duplicated their ID numbers, so if it was either an online and a physical one with the same ID number, we threw out the online one. If they did 2 online ones with the same ID number, if it was the same response, then we kept one of the responses. If it were different responses, we put them both out because we figured we did not know which was the real one. Or if they did not respond to the first question, those were eliminated as well, and there weren't very many of those. But in total, 81 responses were not included in the analysis. So let's talk about the results. The first question, in simple terms, is should City Council allow restaurants in the Highland Mains area to sell alcohol? And the response said yes. 62% of individuals, or 2,100 people, responded yes, that the council should approve the text amendment to allow the sale of alcoholic beverages. Now, this question did have a significant difference between the online responses and the paper. So when you look at those two numbers in front of you, the dark blue are those who filled out the online, the lighter blue are those who filled out the paper version of the survey. And so you can see online, 67% of people said, yes, you should make this change. Versus paper, the majority of people at 57%, so not quite as dramatic of a spread as the online, but still a difference there. 57% of our paper respondents said, no, you should not do this change. But remember back, because we had more than 2 to 1 online to paper, the results ended up at the 62% overall.
Aaron, I don't know if you're going to address this in the future. We've done surveys in the past with online and with paper. What is our responses we had there? Did we have similar where we were, so much more online versus paper, or was it more even? What did we see?
Yes. Can you hold that thought for a few minutes and I will get there? Thank you, Mayor. Question 2. So as a preface, these next 2 questions were only asked to people who said yes at the very beginning. If they said yes, you should do the change council to allow alcoholic sales. We asked them these questions. So the first one was, should the city council allow it everywhere? Because if you remember, the text request in front of you is just about Highland Mains. So this question asked about everywhere. And so again, people who said yes to the first question overwhelmingly said yes to the second question, saying you should do it citywide. These results did not differ online versus paper much. I mean, there were slight differences, but nothing that would be significant there. Question 3, again, if you said yes to the very first question, then we asked you, okay, so what type of alcoholic beverages should be allowed in restaurants? If you remember, there's different types of liquor licenses, and the 2 that the council has been considering is a full service where all alcohol that's legal by the state is allowed versus just a wine and beer only license. So again, if you said yes, you should allow it in Highland Mains. Again, people overwhelmingly said it should be all alcoholic beverages, not necessarily limited to limited service restaurants where it's beer and wine only. These results, it was slightly more different between online and paper, but not drastically, where really, again, it was a large majority, over 80% saying yes, allow all types of alcohol. And then we allowed people to give their explanation to their survey responses. So, and 1,600 people took us up on that. So I'm not sure how many of you read the 92 pages of comments, all of them. There were some really interesting comments in there, and I really appreciate all of the responses and the dedication, frankly, that our residents have to give us that much information and their thoughts on that. Honestly, I tried to do a word cloud with that, but the biggest words that came out were alcohol, Highland, city, and restaurants, and so I didn't feel like it really gave you any information that would be relevant in a word cloud, so. All right. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. When staff mailed out the paper survey, we inadvertently forgot to include a return envelope. Even though it said as part of the instructions, hey, drop it in the envelope we've included and send it back. And honestly, it was a simple error in that when we went to send our instructions to the printer, even though we had verbally told him to do it, we forgot to physically write that. And so it didn't happen. Again, an error, and I'm really sorry that it did. So residents had other ways, and like we said, we really encourage people to do it online. But if they wanted to do a paper, if they didn't want to do the QR code or the link for whatever reason, they could have mailed it themselves, right? Just gotten their own envelope. They would have had to address it, but the letter that we sent them had our return address on it, so they could have just copied that over. They could have sent it back with their utility bill payment, which got to them 3 to 5 days later, depending on where they're at in Highland. And some people did just send it back in with their utility bill payment if they're ones who send it via check to us still.
Just real quick on a comment that I know some said, well, it's going to the utility bill. It goes to exactly the same address. So that was important for everybody to understand. It's Highland City Corporation, and it had the address. Utility bill and this has exactly the same. If they had been an envelope in there, it would have been the exact same envelope that's in your utility bill.
So can I ask a question? So you're saying the city address was included on the original envelope. I'm actually one that mailed mine in because I do online surveys, but I think there's a fair number of older people that are not real good with computers. I mean, I work with them all day. But I was disappointed that we didn't mail out the envelope. But the other thing I was a little disappointed with is if you looked on the survey everywhere, there was no Highland City office address. So yeah, you can say, well, it was on the envelope that the survey came in, but most people like me just opened up the envelope and tossed the envelope. And then I looked at the survey, you know, a little bit later and stuff. So there were a number of people who got the survey right on early before they got their city bill and really had to look up the city address. And I'm just kind of wondering when we tell people there's an envelope in there, and I know it was an honest mistake, and then we don't put the address of the city anywhere on the survey or in the instructions, I just kind of wonder if that was just a little bit of a barrier for some people? Because not everyone in Highland has an up-to-date computer. Not everyone feels comfortable going to Google. A lot of people, I consider myself to be an older Highland. A lot of us are not real comfortable with all the scams and all the other things we get. So I'm just thinking that was another kind of glaring mistake. We probably should have put the address on the survey itself, because that would have made it a lot easier. I had to go online to look up the address, and I mean, I work here. But because it's not an easy address to remember. So I'm just, in future surveys, I think we need to be careful, especially if we tell people there is a return envelope.
You're
Okay.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
It was an error. And, you know, had we included the envelope, there had been no reason to put the address on there because it was there. But you're absolutely right. I am, we'll talk about this more in detail in a minute. I am certain some people did not turn it in because of that, because of our staff error in that capacity.
Aaron, do we have any data that shows how many, put the survey in with their payment, their utility payment versus dropped it off in person?
I don't. So our front desk staff are the ones who collect it. So they're the ones who originally process our utility payments or get them from the drop box, or if they walked into City Hall and they just put them in one pile that said, okay, here's the paper surveys, right? But they didn't track how those came into them. We did set a cutoff date, right? And they said, okay, if they were late, I guess that's another reason we excluded some, right? Is they were late, so they weren't even coded. Those ones that paper surveys that were turned in late.
So they have to be postmarked on the 20th?
Yes, so on the due date, we required them to be postmarked that date.
How many late ones?
Brooklyn, I don't even know, actually. Do you know how many physical late ones we got? Wasn't many.
I have a stack of them at my desk, and there's like maybe 10.
Okay.
So the other question is, when they came in the utility bills, would they just sit on someone's desk, or where did they sit? I know the answer, but I'm just trying to ask.
Yeah.
So maybe everyone else knows how this
So I understand they're secure. So physical ones, yes. So the front desk staff has a locked drawer that those were, as soon as they got delivered to us, they were placed in the locked drawer. We had one staff member who was coding those, and it wasn't Brooklyn or I who have access to the online. It was a different staff member who coded all of the physical surveys for us. And so it went from that locked drawer to her hands to my hands, and they're now in a locked drawer as well.
One last question, since we're asking questions, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
So at the first of your discussion here, you noted that a number of people came in early on and requested more surveys. So did we make sure that they were voters or a certain age? How did you determine whether they got an extra survey?
If they came in, we asked them for their address, and then we asked what's the name on the utility account. And so our front desk staff would look at our utility account and say, okay, this person says 123 Fall Street, and it should be Brian Smith. And if they could answer those questions, we gave them a survey. But it was only one, unless there were very unusual circumstances, like somebody is disabled and can't leave the home. It was one person, one survey. So you couldn't come pick up 5 surveys for your family. We got 2 or 3 in the very beginning who wanted to do that, and that made us very nervous. And so we instituted that rule after those first couple that said, no, you've got to physically come in here and do it, so that we know that we feel like sometime within those 3 weeks, everybody could come in between 7:30 and 6 o'clock to get that survey if it mattered to them.
And you say how many were there?
About 100.
About 100?
So we had options for people to drop it off outside of the envelope. Oops. Mayor, to your earlier question, is it surprising that we got more online than paper? To me, it's not, especially because of how heavily we tried to promote to do it online. So what the graph in front of you is showing how people have responded to our resident survey over the past 7 years while we've done it. So 5 of the 7 years, a majority of our responses have come from online methods. And the last 2 years, so in 2021 and 2022, it has been a rising number. So 2022, it was almost 70% of our responses did come online. So more recently, we have seen, and in our resident survey, we do see that more people respond online than they do the physical ones as well. Could the results have changed because of the envelope or anything else? So if you assumed that the yes number stayed the same, assume we only got, so like I mentioned, Councilmember Smith, I absolutely agree that some people who were going to turn in the physical survey didn't because we forgot to include the envelope. So in order to change the results, it would have taken 858 additional no responses to change the results to just be a minor majority saying, 51% saying, no, you should not change the law. You should not allow restaurants in Highland Mains to sell alcohol. So essentially you would need more than the number of people who did turn in physical surveys to turn in a no response to change those results. But remember, 57% of people said, no, don't do it, but that means 43% of people said yes. So if you get 100 more surveys, 57 of those say no, 43 of those say yes. So because of that fact, we can't assume that those who did not turn in the survey because of the envelope issue were all going to say no. It's better to assume that essentially an equal amount of people did that. So for every, if 100 people did not turn in the survey because of that, 57 of them would have said no, but 43 of them would have said yes. So because of that, if you play out the numbers, it essentially would have taken almost 7,000 additional surveys to flip the results, so that 51% of people said, no, you should not change the law. You should not allow Highland Mains to sell alcohol, or restaurants in Highland Mains area to sell alcohol.
Aaron, can I ask a question? So we talked about the barrier with the envelopes and the problem that caused. Did you get any complaints about the online process? I know there were a couple people who had like problems with different IP addresses, or what kind of problems did you see that way?
That's what we heard. People would say, it's blocking me, it's telling me I already did the survey, right? Because maybe they're using it on one device or something like that. And so we would tell them, use a different device if you can, or do the physical one, right? If one of you did a paper one, one of you did the online one, do a physical one if you only have one device. You could also turn off your Wi-Fi, and then that usually would get you a different IP address as well, whether you're on your home Wi-Fi or whether you're using data. So we gave people some of those tricks. That's actually, we also looked to see if duplicate IP address were being used. It's kind of one of our data scrubs. We didn't exclude anybody because of that, because as we found out, if you're on data, carriers will use the same Wi-Fi. So like we had 100, and as we Googled it, it was like all Verizon in Highland kind of a thing or something like that. So, but it was kind of one piece of tool we looked at when we were saying, has there been any data manipulation? Have people tried to stuff a ballot box with this?
So let me ask you a question. So just explain to me, on the survey that people used SurveyMonkey, right? How does that work, and how do you get the data back from SurveyMonkey? And is it reliable? Is there any way it could be hacked? So my company, we got ransomware 4 years ago. Yeah. It's cost us, a lot of money, millions of dollars. And we've got systems set up now, and our IT specialist told us in our meeting last week that people are trying to hack us 1,000 times a month. So I can't believe that some of these other entities are not being hacked and different things. Now, I'm not saying I'm questioning the results of the survey. I just wonder, what protections do they have for the survey? How does it work when it's all online? How do you process it?
That's one thing that we certainly worried about with online. If there are plenty of smart people in the world who could write something called a bot, right, to just autofill this over and over and over again and produce results that are not true. So one of the things I can't speak to SurveyMonkey's barriers themselves. What I can tell you is after we got 100 online responses, so there are only 2 staff members, myself and Brooklyn, who have access to the online data. After we got 100 responses, the percent did not largely shift. It stayed within 5% of each other, the yes to no. And so that, as I watched that, it made me feel like this isn't being hacked. And that's honestly, going back to statistics speak, that's the true definition of a normal distribution, right? Like once you get a certain population number, the results stay the same. And in addition, so one thing we did to check to make sure that nobody had hacked, we looked at the timestamps on all of them, because SurveyMonkey does produce those timestamps for us of how many were we getting per day. And we never saw this strange bump at all. It was like we saw a bump in the very beginning and then it would teeter off. And then when we did a push again, we'd see a bump and it would teeter off. And so it was all very logical. While, I mean, I can't say 100% everything's fine, I did not see any red flags in any of that to make me think that we had been hacked in any way.
Actually, when you talk about you only could do one ISP to do it in, when I came in and I said, hey, Aaron, you only can do one ISP, she goes, well, good. That was meant to kind of be that way to try to keep some integrity. That kind of surprised me. I thought, hey, we've got a problem. But you made it a little harder so they couldn't just keep using that same ISP to keep sending in things. They kind of had to do something different.
Well, it wasn't impossible to do. It made it a little harder, right? 'Cause we were trying to keep it to be secure, right? So these results were trustworthy, ultimately.
And just a quick Google search shows SurveyMonkey's trusted by 98% of Fortune 500 companies and is used in over 350,000 organizations. And that's from TrustRadius that who posted that. So just on the viability of SurveyMonkey.
Sorry, Stephanie. Honestly, I don't have anything more other than at this point. So those are the results, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. At this point, right now, what staff is planning on is this text amendment will be reconsidered in January after the election when we have a new city council in place. So staff at this point is doing some prep work similar to what Mr. Courtney talked about, just to make sure that we're ready for that vote. But that's where staff is at this point, unless we receive further direction.
So the plan is to do it the very first Tuesday in January, right?
Actually, the third Tuesday. So we'll talk about the calendar next time, but the first Tuesday is the 2nd, like right after New Year's Day. So we were thinking that'd probably be our swearing in ceremony. And then on the 16th, we'd have an actual meeting. But if council wants to adjust those dates,
So we'll have the new council, and then 4 of the 5 members on the council will be officially elected. Is that correct?
Correct.
So council, before we maybe ask any of the public to come up, if they have public comment on this, is there any questions you have of Aaron or staff of the survey, results, integrity, or things in that nature?
My only comment is to thank you for the good work that you've done. I think it was excellent. It's understandable that mistakes are made, and I know that that was an honest mistake, and I think we mitigated as best we could. But I want to express my appreciation to you and the staff that have put this together and got the results that we have.
One comment as we look at, hey, we only sent out 2 surveys per household. I received just last week all the ballots to come in. I received 5 ballots. Now it's because I had some kids at college and all that, and I'm going, well, interesting. And I'm not saying we've never done it. We've always tried to get our kids to do it. But I've heard some have said, hey, my kids are on a mission. I'm going to fill this out for them. Or
no, we shouldn't do that.
They're not supposed to. They're not supposed to do that. But occasionally, I've heard some that have.
So I have a daughter that moved, and we sent her ballot back to the county.
So that's probably the best thing. If you have extra ballots aren't going to be used, send them back so they can get that cleared up. So.
We did the same thing. We got 5, and there's only 2 of us in the house. We had 5, we took 3 back.
So, okay, as we go through that, at this time, we've mentioned that we'd like to have, if there's some of the public here that'd like to come up, you're welcome to actually ask questions. This is, this could be a little different than this is not necessarily always just a public comment. If you have questions or some clarifications you'd like to have on the survey, we'll try to help answer that. Or if there's something you got to go research, or if you'd like to make some comments to the council. So at this time, we would ask that you try to keep it to 3 minutes. So we've got still a lot of things on our agenda, and the clock is working, so it's getting closer to 8. And so with that, if there's anyone that'd like to go ahead and come up, if you'll just state your name, and if you'll try to keep it. But if you have questions or dialogue, we're welcome to see if we can help. But if not, we'll also take your comments. So go ahead and let's come up, if you'll give us your name. And
hello, my name is Dr. Jan Eyring, and I moved from California in 2017 to live in this quiet bedroom community of Highland. And I want to thank the city council members. I've come to some of your meetings for your service, also for the desire to hear from the citizens of Highland on this plan for the commercial area near the old Blue Lemon restaurant. I was also here listening to the debate in these chambers where all of the candidates, including the write-in candidates, were allowed to speak on the issue, and I believe it was unanimous as I listened to the 6 candidates that they were in favor of the Highland Mains, a beautiful place for citizens to gather downtown with fire pits, landscaping, benches, and restrooms for citizen use. However, the disagreement occurred when candidates expressed varying degrees of dependence on the results of this Highland survey that you are talking about to make their decisions about moving forward with the developer's plan. I believe Liz Rice is the only one who expressed the idea that she wanted to keep Highland and maintain the alcohol ban here from kind of her own personal values and convictions. But the developers have, I believe, given us a very false choice between putting in more fast food restaurants or putting in 4 restaurants which must serve alcohol. A point to consider is that an upscale restaurant with good food that does not serve alcohol would actually be a major attraction for the majority of Highland families. Have the citizens and city council put any work into researching restaurants with menus without alcohol besides the one suggested by the developer? So that's a question for you. 3 of those are all owned by the same Heirloom restaurant group, Black Sheep Pizzeria 712 and Communal. So that's just kind of one entity. I've just wondered how far the research has gone. Finally, I question the survey methodology used by the city council because it seems to have attracted the highly motivated citizens interested in changing the alcohol ban versus the majority of the city that enjoy the status quo. I mean, they like the way things are going, and it looks like they didn't turn their surveys in. That, is not good, but keeping Highland as Highland. It appears that 2,119 votes in a non-randomized survey in a city of 12,000 people are going to constitute the basis for overturning a 1977 ban on serving alcohol. So I'd like to suggest that the city council do a follow-up survey, especially based on these irregularities we've heard about today. Hire a professional phone survey company which can make phone calls to a randomized sample of Highland residents. It wouldn't be too expensive, wouldn't take too long, but we would be sure to hit all the neighborhoods and get a sense of really what the Highland residents think. It'd be a different approach through phone versus these other 2 methods that you've talked about. I think adding that research to the results that you've shown would really give us a full picture of what Highland residents want. Thanks for your time.
Okay,
Thank you.
Go ahead. We're going to have a look. This is going to be an unusual, because this is an unusual situation before Highland. So you asked a question about what research to be able to go find other restaurants that would, because the developer says, hey, I'm struggling to find restaurants that does not serve alcohol, or that's what they'd like to have curate their menu. Is there any council members that'd like to address that question? Because I can address it, but I want to make sure the council can address it.
Okay.
Kim?
Sure, this is a question that I actually have asked, and I called up every single developer in Highland to say, hey, what are difficulties you face in bringing in quality commercial? What is it that you're hearing back? And essentially the answer that I heard from not just the Highland Main developers, but from Boyer, from McKay, from WCI, is essentially it is very difficult to get restaurants and commercial properties to come to Highland that are not belonging to Utah County. For example, even getting Arby's and Costa Vida to come was difficult. And the only reasons they got those 2 is because they were managed by people that lived in Utah County. Mm-hmm. And so that was one thing that they said, once they come here, then they get the values and mentality here, but it's the getting them here. Mm-hmm. And so that's why those restrictions are difficult to deal with. And it's not just restaurants, it's even fast food, trying to get them here outside of the Utah County commercial that is here. Mm-hmm. So that's a great question.
Go ahead.
Or did you have a comment?
Well, I'm a foodie, okay? I'm from Berkeley, Southern California. I mean, I love food, and I travel for it here, into Salt Lake and, Orem, different places. But I could name 10 restaurants that the Beirut Cafe in Murray, and El Farolito and American Fork. I mean, there's good ones. They're kind of reasonably priced. Have you asked the citizens, maybe they could think of things that are just so delicious and well priced, and don't know who's supposed to make the phone calls to get to ask the questions, but I'd be willing to help, you know?
Yeah, and honestly, I bet the developer would totally welcome that from everything that I know. I did the same process. I've asked. I think the Sunday issue is one also that they miss out on those revenue opportunities, and so that's a hesitancy in coming. But I did, with a pretty good eclectic group of people from Highland, brainstorm a ton of different restaurants. There seemed to be a high need by the developer to find Utah-based businesses that we could draw from Park City or Salt Lake or down in Provo to keep those restaurants in the ecosystem instead of going to national chains as well. And from that long list, you whittle it down, and this was the common denominator, which is why the developer is kind of where they're at. He's been at this for a very long time, I think, to try to figure out the best solution possible.
But if tomorrow you could find 4 restaurants and they were willing to come in, a lot of these sort of difficulties would be solved in a way without
and I would just
tampering
also
with
ask,
the alcohol
we
law
have
at
commercial
all.
property here. We've had commercial property here for a long time, and all we've been getting is fast food, banks, cookie companies. I mean, that's what's been coming here to Highland so far, and I think that also tells an interesting story.
Yeah, I mean, I am in agreement. I don't want more fast foods
Right.
either. But I
So maybe to kind of give. So when this came up, the developer brought in a realtor. You mean that who's going to? So the city can reach out, but traditionally they have a realtor that will market. And I looked right at him. I said, "You got to get to work. You're hitting all the wrong places. You need to go talk." I talked about Maggleby's. You need to get up to Maddox. And I know Maddox at one time expanded down to South Jordan and went back up to the. I go, you got to. But once
how about Maggleby's? What did they say?
Maggleby's, they're down in American Fork. You've got several that you could go and find. And I said, you've got to go out there and curate and really get to work. Because I said, some of it is you've got to work. Because it is finding. We also then went and we reached out. One of the council members, Brittany Bills, actually set up a meeting with a restaurant that has 244 restaurants, if they be the same. A lot of them here in Utah County. We talked with that restaurant or saying, okay, what can we expect if we don't have alcohol? And this was happened to be, I got to be careful because I don't think they want, they would be very well known. They actually have some restaurants that have alcohol, and they said, hey, in the Utah County area, he goes, I think some of these guys need to be careful. They're coming. They're not going to have the strong sales of alcohol like they thought, especially in the northern Utah County area. He goes, so first I try to educate them that they might be coming seeking this, but their sales might not be strong. They actually mentioned they were looking at a restaurant in northern Utah County, minimizing the bar area and trying to do more of a milkshake bar. So they are also, so we really.
Those are creative things. I mean, how about offering in Scotland, there's many hot chocolate bars, and water, sparkling water, the waters and the herb teas. I mean, they could make a lot of money off of us.
The city can the city doesn't usually go get the tenants as much as the developer. And so the developer is the one that's brought in and says, hey, these are the list of, now some of it, I'm in the commercial real estate side. They've went from being a $30 a square foot up to $50 as they've changed their development. Meaning when they were doing more of a quick serve drive up, they're looking at $30 a foot. As they're trying to go more sit down, more fine with more of a courtyard, they've tried to raise the rent to $50. That does change also your clientele of restaurateurs that are going to be able to come in. And so I just, we're sensitive that, hey, you need to get to work. Let's go find these other tenants. So on the alcohol. But you need to be aware what happens. The developer made the application to the city to change this ordinance. This is not city council led, by the way. The change of the alcohol has not been city council led. It's been developer led he's paid, Aaron, was it $1,500 they had to pay?
It's a $1,000 text amendment fee.
It was a text amendment, and that's how it's been coming to the city. It was the developer made a text amendment. When it came into the city council on August 1st, the vote was 2 in favor, and they couldn't get a third vote to pass it. That's when the council at the time said, we'd like to, before we move forward with this, we'd like to get a survey. This is kind of when all of it started to curate, was back in that August, and that's where we're now at, and we've taken quite a bit of time. but you understand, up until then, we've been talking to this developer. We met Kim.
A couple years.
Yeah, and it was December, did we say December? Yeah, 2021. We met even at that time with a restaurant that was here locally. They have them in St. George. They had them over in the Kanab area. So it was a local restaurant, but they were also hoping to have some alcohol. You know, and it's unfortunately a lot of these restaurateurs, if they're trying to do a little more sit down.
One question, would the developer still develop the Highland Mains if he did the fast food idea? Because I think everyone loves that gathering place.
His first concept had, I think it was 4 drive-throughs. The second concept still had 1 drive-through, but he showed the courtyard, and that was what he had made his text amendment for and what his submission was for.
You mean to do an add-on if he could have the 4 restaurants? Is that right?
For the courtyard system. So he got approved back, so they met with us in 2021, they came through, and by that August of 2022, they were approved with their first concept. They came in November of last year and presented to the city council that they just said that there was one paseo, am I saying the word right? That they'd went to this one paseo down in California, this is where they were from in that area, and they fell in love with the open courtyard concept, and they had decided to make a change. Now, if you remember, in August 2022, they had all of their piping, they'd been moving dirt, you know, they were getting ready to move forward. They put that on hold, they came in, they've revamped it, they brought it into us in November with this new courtyard concept. So it was, now I'm sure there's been some council members saying, hey, we'd love to have some sit down. That has been true from all of us. We've heard from a lot of residents, we'd like to have more food options. And when we did our economic study, our economic study did not show we could support another grocery store, but we could support more restaurants. And so, I mean, but your question coming back, yes, we would love to have some that would, even now, they don't have to come serve alcohol. You know, we'd love to have some, you know, I don't think anyone's going to, now Kim, if a Maddox restaurant comes, because I brought up some others, would you be in favor of Maddox?
I don't even. Oh, is that your favorite restaurant?
I might go there on Friday, so just it's a
place
I do visit often.
Are you inviting us?
It just depends if there's a salad there. Is there a salad?
They have a good seafood salad, just so you're aware.
I'll take it.
Anyway, we can get going off of this the weeds. Anyway, is that kind of helped answer your questions? That we have been sensitive about what, you know, and we have been trying to give them. I mean, I pretty well, I kind of got feisty with the realtor saying, you know, he just needed to kind of get to work to find those who would come to Highland and not do alcohol. I mean, so it was a conversation we had, and we have sought out others.
I mean, you'd be open if any of us here could.
I think the developer
get the owner to say, yeah, I'm.
I don't think, you know, the developer's just looking for a good long-term tenants that will come and be consistent, and they'll be successful and help they're also looking for their, you know, we don't want to see someone come in and then come back out within a year. I mean, that's a little bit of, we will see, I don't think all 4 restaurants in 5 years. If we get 4 restaurants in, we'll probably be the same in 5 years. It's just that it's a really hard business.
Okay, well, thank
you for your comments.
Providing the background.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay. This is a little different council meeting because this has been one of those issues that we want to have. If you have questions, let's have a dialogue to try to help answer.
Sure. My name's Kristen Ritchie. And I just wanted to share, you know, as we sit and talk about this new development and the needs for restaurants and socialization, it's been about 11 years that my youngest daughter, was hit by a drunk driver. She was on a band trip from the high school. They were walking across the street to a pizza parlor at night after winning the competition. She was the drum major, and a drunk driver came right smack through the intersection and took her out and another kid. And she lived through the experience, but it has been life-changing. I'm just saying it has altered her life and our family's life dramatically. And so as we talk about the introduction of alcohol into our community, and particularly into this area very near a very busy intersection as it is, I have red flags go off in my head about inviting that in to our lovely community and sort of changing the dynamics. I realize that drunk drivers could already be driving on that area. I recognize that. But I just am very sensitive about the fact that inviting more alcohol into our community is not necessarily a good thing. I love the idea of wonderful development, things that make our community, how do I say, fresher, more, I guess more of a destination to come for people. I understand that, but as far as like the importance of that, it's way down the list in my family. It's been about 13 years of living with the consequences of someone else's choices. And I don't hear it talked about a lot. And it may be because we live in a community where it hasn't been a huge issue. You know, we are a little bit of a sheltered life, and it's beautiful. But I got to know, several people who are in a similar situation, and it just doesn't seem like something we want to really invite with gusto into our community. I love the idea of restaurants. My favorite is Edna's. If there was any way to get Edna's over here, but I would just express my concern about alcohol in our community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone like to address concerns that Kristen's kind of brought up?
I just want to talk about that because that's really hits me also. First of all, I love Edna's as well. It's a really
Before
great restaurant.
where's Edna's at? You guys are already getting me
Lehigh.
hungry. Where's this at?
Lehigh.
What do they serve?
The opposite side of the freeway.
Yeah.
But when you go there, you have to be prepared to stand in a line because there's a massive, it's always packed.
We just did a pitch for Edna's. Okay, we'd be happy.
That's
to
another
embrace
one
it.
we should try for. I do want to address that also because I feel like we have similar situations, but unfortunately, my brother was the one who did do who drove under the influence, and I remember picking him up at the jail, and the devastation of that as well. And I have a 15-year-old daughter who has her learner's permit and is the world's worst driver, and doesn't have those defense skills yet when she's driving. And when this came on to the council, my number one thing that I looked at was public safety, because if it ever puts me or my kids at danger, then there is never going to be a way for me to be okay saying yes to this. And after consulting with our police chief about this and looking at data, it's really interesting to see that, looking at the cities around us compared to us, how many DUIs we have. For example, we had 4 DUIs this past year, and American Fork, who has a much higher population, only had 3 DUIs. And even looking at dry cities versus wet cities, dry cities actually have less DUI. Have more DUIs than. Sorry, I have a cold, so it's very hard to think right now. Dry cities actually have more DUIs than wet cities, and actually their rate of alcoholism and drug usage is actually higher. So it really got me to start looking into this and data and trying to understand those numbers and understand also, Chief William isn't even here, when he said that it actually wouldn't be a public safety issue or increase our number of DUIs. And I actually called up the country club as well, and I was like, you guys are a pilot right here. We've had you guys serving alcohol in our city since, before it was incorporated. How many DUIs have you had? How many incidences have you had? And it was 0, which was really interesting as well. So that is something I really, really took into consideration, because I think all of us have incidences within our lives where we've, alcohol has destroyed some aspect of it. And when I think about restaurants versus alcohol and beer being sold in a grocery store, I have 2 different thoughts on that, because in a restaurant, it is controlled and restricted and monitored and very difficult to leave a restaurant inebriated. Your license is yanked away versus teenagers going to a gas station with a fake license and can buy as much alcohol as they possibly want. And that's where those DUIs come from, the bars and the gas stations. And grocery stores. And so that's a really great comment, and that was something that I really took into consideration when looking into this.
I'd like to make a comment on that. As you know, I'm a physician. I have a little different perspective because I have a practice. I've been here for 35 years. And I didn't want to talk too much about this tonight, but I'm going to, just a kind of a little bit of a rebuttal. So I see alcohol accidents in my patient practice daily. And I can give you a lot of stories because I've really looked at it since August when we first started this big discussion. So I had a young lady, 28, 29, who got rear-ended by someone who was inebriated. Fortunately, wasn't a lot of damage done, but she had just finished a multi-month period of rehab for her back, and it set her totally back. She says, my back's worse than it was before. I had an 84-year-old woman who's very good driver. You'd think she was much less in age, and she came in last week. And her Lexus that she'd had for many years, that her husband, who is now gone, and she loved that car. She was rear-ended by somebody who was inebriated. Fortunately, she wasn't injured bad, but it destroyed her car, and she was heartbroken. We brought into a cottage meeting here one of the hospitalists who said, oh, we don't see too much in American Fork. Well, he took care of my patient who was inebriated and in the critical care unit last weekend. So to sit up here and say there's no problem with alcohol in this area is really bothersome to me. So American Fork Hospital kind of draws from Highland, which is dry, Alpine, which is dry. Cedar Hills, I think they only have the golf course, and they sell beer, I believe, at Hearts, but Walmart's chose not to sell. American Fork has a pool hall, or a lounge, and Pleasant Grove has a pool hall, but the state liquor store has been moved down close to Linden. So we don't have a lot of DUIs. We don't have a lot of things, but I see it all the time in my practice. So I have a hard time when people get up here and say there's no problem and this is going to be okay. So I'm a little uncomfortable for it, just from personal experience. So I appreciate your story because I hear those stories a lot.
I didn't mean to say that there's no problem in Utah.
Well, you didn't say that.
I'm just saying that there's probably a lower level of DUI driving than we had in California. But,
right.
It's one thing to study statistics on something. It's another thing to live it.
Yeah.
With your daughter whose life's changed forever. And I would just hate to see that happen to someone else. And it likely will, But anyway, that's all I have to say about it.
I appreciate Christian.
Yeah,
one of the big things, this is for me, the biggest fear of any change. We're the safest city, Lone Peak Public Safety for many years. And you always worry, does this make a change? And yet that's where we really seek out some of the residents. That's why we try to have some other meetings. You had the police chief, which, we might have some different opinions there. I actually, after he made that comment, I went and I said, okay, are we talking your personal opinion or what data, what some things? Because I'll admit, I did challenge the police officer, our police chief a little bit on his comment he gave at our public meeting. I was going, okay, I was a little surprised how bold that was. I'm just being open on that, and as I came back, I said, okay, we'll have to respect. I've done some research. You have some of the data you're also looking at, and yet we do rely on professionals. And as Chief Williams came back and says, I don't see that. We're looking at public safety. That's our biggest, to me as a city council, we're to provide public safety.
Yeah.
And so it is something, and I apologize about your daughter. Yeah. My son's an attorney. He says, don't do anything with DUI, and your marijuana is terrible out there. That's all he ever prosecutes is all these DUIs and marijuana that are caught with driving. And he goes, we all see that in the community, unfortunately. Most of those, if I try to track them down, though, they're not coming out of restaurants. They're coming out of either their home, they're coming out of, I actually have, when you ask, I have a neighbor, his specialty, he works at the Utah Highway Patrol. He is the DUI trainer to teach people how to recognize. And I looked and I says, Emery, tell me, share with me. Wes, you were there. Do you remember, Emery? We were there at the park, and I said, I want you to help me here. Where's our risk? We were trying, we're trying to be sensitive about the community. We don't want to make us unsafe. And I think all the council, that's their desire. So I'm sorry about your daughter, and we don't ever want to have someone in 5 years says, well, look, you did this, and they came out of this Beaumont bakery and they got hit because they were drunk. That's going to be the worst thing we ever could find.
Yeah.
So thank you for your comment.
You bet.
Hey, others?
Samantha Kirby, resident. I was just wondering, we received about the same time the survey came out, there was a really shiny brochure. Did that come from the city council?
The developer.
You're
The
talking,
develop-
okay, after the
It came out in the developer.
there was one that was
Yes.
all about the nice pictures of it. That came from the developer.
Okay, that's what I thought. And my husband, he thought, okay, that sounds all right. And he saw the brochure and he said, red flag, money, 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 money. That's all they're coming for. And the developer is from California. They've seen these beautiful courtyards. The weather there is lovely. They don't have snow, 3 or 4 months of the year. And I think our community, they have larger lots, they have fire pits, they have backyards. This is where they do their entertaining. And when I think about the location, it's behind the car wash, it's behind the dry cleaners, it's behind here, it's behind there. Who's even going to know it's there? And then you think of a traffic problem. You're going to have left turns turning in off from Timpanogos Highway. You're going to have, how do they get in on Alpine? And really, it's going to be, if you like, we like a restaurant. We'll go to Edna's. It's only like a few miles away. Why would someone go behind the car wash to get to a restaurant? I just think the location, I just don't think our community really needs restaurants. Are we dying to have that in our community? I just don't see that it's going to be a draw. If it's a draw, that's bad because of the traffic. You're going to have, seriously, to get to the car wash, you make that left turn and the traffic's going all the way. I just don't think it's a great idea. One of our friends would like to have come to the meeting tonight. His name is Mike Beck. He's an anesthesiologist, and I'll just read what his text said. Sorry, I'm at the hospital until tomorrow morning. I'm always amused by people who think Utah has strict alcohol laws. I grew up in the South where strict and bizarre alcohol laws were common. Anyone who thinks these laws aren't important should come and spend a night in the emergency room with me. Majority of issues are either drug or alcohol related. I just kind of think about the book. I don't know if you know it, if you have children. And it's, if you give a mouse a cookie, we're going to give this developer mouse the opportunity to have alcohol. Then it's going to go further down. Other places will develop. They want alcohol. And then then they're going to want Sunday. They're not going to want closures on Sunday. So it's give a mouse a cookie, and all these doors open up to money rather than quality of life. Thank you.
If we can, there might be some that have difference of opinions, so we try to not clap at council meetings to try to hinder others that might want to get up.
Okay, so I actually wanted to bring up the same thing that she just brought up, and that is this lovely marketing piece that was sent out by the developer as though it was coming from the city. And it went out at the same time as the survey. And there were a lot of people that looked at this shiny thing that says, Highland City has sent every resident a survey and we need your input before this development can become a reality. Does that not sound like it came directly from Highland City? Like it's a done deal, so go ahead and fill out your survey, but we're gonna decide to do what we want. On the back side of it, it says, the zoning and city ordinances for this particular plot of land do not currently allow for the service of alcoholic beverages. For this reason, the developer has applied to Highland City for property level exception to the current restrictions. If the developer wrote this, why did they put themselves as a third person? the developer has. I think that developers frequently come in here and make calculated risks. Yes, he paid $1,000 to apply. Calculated risk. He's going to make a lot of money on this. He's come in here and he's argued that this is a community property, and it's not. It's a private property. And as much as you want to pretend that you'll have some input in what he puts in his property, he gets the final say. The only thing that the city can do is provide the framework that restricts what he can do that affects our way of life and our quality of life. So I'm really frustrated because I've been arguing for years against council after council after council who comes in here and supports developers first. You work for us. And I don't trust the survey. I trust the ballots. They have signatures. They will be verified. The ballots that are going out right now, that is your survey. And the results of that election will tell you whether or not the Highland residents actually believed this marketing piece from a developer that basically implied that the city's already decided. And I've had it happen before. It happened with Sky Estates. I was there. They had a neighborhood meeting. They checked the boxes. They had a neighborhood meeting. 50 people I knew went to that neighborhood meeting. 50 people that I knew personally went to that neighborhood meeting. They came back to the city and reported that nobody came. Nobody cared. They didn't turn in the roll that we all signed. They didn't do any of that. Developers want to make money, and we just want to keep Highland Highland. We just want to live here peacefully and safely with our families. So please consider residents before developers. This is not public property. This is private property. We have no control except the ordinances that are going to restrict what he can and cannot do with that property. And he's already been approved twice. He can build tomorrow. That's my comments.
Thank you very much. Okay, council, any questions or comments on that?
Well, I have a question for you, Kurt. There's two plans that he submitted, the one with the fast food and then the Highland Mains ones. Will he make more money? Is it going to cost him more to develop the Highlands Main or more to develop the fast food? I guess I'm just asking you this because you're a commercial developer.
I'm just going to go off an assumption that if you're a developer and make a change and wait on this, that their second concept has to be more profitable for them. And maybe it's longer term, maybe they're looking for Highland Mains it's not just development. They also own where Little Caesars is at. They own a lot of those buildings around there, and so they might be looking.
Lemon.
Yeah, they own the Blue Lemon. And so they might be looking at, hey, how do I enhance all of my property? But I would guesstimate the only reason I would stop from what you already have as a concept. I mean, okay, your question is the first concept I'd heard from several tenants that were going in there. I mean, I told several guys to go and look and talk to Highland Mains because they were over by Myers, and there was certain food that they had some restriction on. They couldn't do barbecue. They couldn't do steak. There's some things that Myers has restrictions. And so they were looking to go over there. I understood they already had tenants on their first concept. I don't know why you'd ever back off where you have almost totally leased up and jump and do this. I'd have to assume it's more profitable for them. However, that's just an assumption. I haven't heard it from them, but it might help their whole development. Does that answer your question, Kim? Now, here's the other thing
I was curious because the second concept has a lot more open space and isn't as developed as the first.
When I talk to them, it's not $30 a square foot. They're going to go up to $50. I'm just saying they've raised their rent. The one elephant in the room that was really a struggle, I think, is for the council. Has to also look when Highland Mains come in. Here's the comment. When you go, you have to be an educated developer, and you have to go do your due diligence before you go and purchase a piece of property. The unfortunate, some of it, there's twofold. Yes, they should go look at the permitted uses. But when they did meet with city staff, the staff kept telling them that alcohol was going to be allowed. Now, it was not beer. It was just wine and mixed drinks. And they kept saying they wanted to be able to serve beer. And so I always understood they'd probably still be needing a request amendment. But that was unfortunate. However, they also had the thing that they should go look what the permitted uses. They are skilled. This is not a small developer coming in. This is not a one-off. They are, I think, is it called Major National Corporation? Or, I mean, that's kind of their name out of California.
So I've always been confused a little bit because there's never been a council in the history of Highland that's ever voted for alcohol sales. So I've always been kind of, and beer sales were explicitly banned before liquor by the drink changed and different things. So I've always been just a little confused how the staff then conveyed the idea that you could sell beer and wine. So I don't know. And that area was prohibited for sure. So it's always been confusing to
I don't
me.
think they were ever told they could sell beer. It was, and Rob, you were kind of helping with this. And unfortunately, we had one of the employees that is no longer with us was in those meetings. But they said they could do wine and mixed drinks, but not beer. They always, I think, knew the beer was an issue. Is that correct, Rob?
My understanding,
Rob's our city attorney, by the way.
we had a meeting with the city council 2 or 3 years ago where Candace, the city treasurer, and we had a discussion with the council about the city's alcohol laws because we realized there was a gap in the city's code. We brought that out to the council at the time because we pointed out that over time, the way the state law has changed, the city's prohibition on beer sales was not as encompassing as perhaps it was supposed to be back when it was adopted. And we raised the point that this could potentially allow the sale of liquor, the higher alcohol content drinks, in certain areas in the city. It wasn't specific to Highland Mains. This was just a general, we were looking at business license, there's a prohibition in there about sales of beer. And then this applicant came in, and I think it was, again, I was never part of those conversations, but it was a discussion, I think, with staff of saying, we had that conversation in the back of their mind knowing, we know we prohibit beer, but we might allow these other types of sales. Then as the application became more formalized, that's when staff did a re-review of the zone and say, oh, and there's another restriction in there specific to this zone as well. But so we raised that beer was prohibited, other sales might be allowed, and then that just kind of never got followed up on until this application came through when we did a more thorough dive into it because it suddenly was pressing.
Regarding the C1 zone, which was Kohler's.
Correct.
Macy's now, if a restaurant there today, and I'm talking about existing law, if we don't make one change, could a restaurant there today apply for a license, and would we be able to stop them for spirits and wine? Not beer, but spirits and wine.
The way that state law is, no, because the way state law is written is if you don't prohibit it, it's generally allowed. And where we have a very specific prohibition that says no beer sales in the city. We even have other zones that say no alcohol sales, period. For the C1 zone, where it just leaves it open, it'd be presumed that if you can have a restaurant there, you could sell anything that is allowed to be sold in Highland.
So if we don't make a change, if we keep everything exactly the same way it is, China Walk could serve alcohol if they applied for a license. Is that correct?
Correct.
But that's never happened because the understanding's always been that there were no alcohol sales in Highland.
The question is,
Yeah.
are we covered now? And the answer is no.
No, we're not. But, I don't remember when you came to the council and told us that. I've been on the council for the last 6 years. So somehow I didn't click into that.
There was a meeting, I believe, in January, February of 2021. Candace came up. I was on the council. I wasn't the mayor at the time. And she mentioned that we had a gap in that if someone applied, there could be some alcohol. At the time, we were still having some COVID situations going on. I mean, it was, I don't know if we were, I think we were in person, but we had to go back out. I mean, it was just a kind of a weird time with the COVID. And I remember the conversation. And I'll be very transparent this way, is that the reason I didn't push it is because at the time it appeared that there were 3 council members that were in favor of changing the alcohol law. And I said, I'm not in favor, so I'm not going to do anything about it. I just, and so that's kind of how that came down back at that time.
And it was not an action item. It was never presented as council. We need to take
discussion.
action. It was Candace had been looking through the business license code, and talked to me and said, this seems weird. We talked it through. We said, let's bring it to the council and get some, just have a discussion. And then I think it was because of COVID and other staff priorities, it just never got followed up on since then until this raised the issue to the forefront.
So this happened in a public meeting. And can we find the date of that public meeting? And I'll go back and look at the minutes because for some reason or other, I don't remember the discussion.
Yes, this was a meeting on November 10th, 2020.
Okay.
November 10th,
So that was kind of
2020.
in that COVID time.
It was, yes. And to your point, there for a while we used to do, as far as we can tell, conditional use permits essentially for businesses coming in, where we would review individual businesses and say, okay, you want to go in there, here's a list of conditions. And a lot of those conditions, basically when it came up, also prohibited alcohol sales, but it was on a business by business case, not a zone case. And then we've changed the code to remove conditional uses. Again, it's just, we never touched that part of it. It just, correct.
Going back to what Ron's question. So we have 2 sit-down restaurants, by the way, in Highland I'm aware of at this time. We have the little China Walk, and we have Thai Drift. And what I'm saying by sit down is where you sit down, they'll come take your order, and they'll then bring the food out, and they'll bring your check. If those 2 restaurants tomorrow decide they wanted to do wine or mixed drinks, we wouldn't be able to, there's no ordinance in place that would stop them from doing that at this time.
Correct. They'd come in for an approval from the city. The way it works is...
They do have to still get approval?
So they'd have to go to the state to get licensed with the state and do various inspections, do a training, get certified. They have to get a state
liquor license,
Department of Alcohol Beverage Services license. As part of that, they get a local consent form. Typically, we handle it through a business license, but they have a form that actually either we'd issue a license or we sign off saying we would allow this because our code allows it. So we would still see it at that point after they've worked with the state.
Okay.
If we at that point said we don't allow it, we would be liable?
They could potentially
Because
challenge
the
that
code-
decision. Essentially, as with any land use type thing, if we said, oh, you want to put in an R140 subdivision, no, you can't because we don't like that.
Yeah.
They could challenge, the developer could challenge and say, well, the zoning allows it. I'm allowed to do that.
Right, and right now we
that
allow
process.
it by the zone.
I mean, this is kind of, we're kind of getting those weeds things. And I think it's been good. Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to come make some public comment?
Good evening. My name's David Ellis. I'm a new resident to Highland. I've only lived here 19 years. Came here from California. My opinion on this is tainted in a couple of ways. I was raised in a household that alcohol was quite prevalent. Both my parents were hardcore alcoholics. My older brother died of cancer in his liver that was alcohol-induced. And the other thing that taints my opinion is I'm also a retired law enforcement officer. I worked 20 years in Oakland, California. Now, Oakland doesn't compare much to Highland, but those experiences, what they've taught me is that I never met an individual who made a better decision because they had been drinking than they would have made had they not been drinking. I've never seen a household that was better or stronger, or a family that was better or stronger because there was alcohol in their home or in their lives. And if those two statements are true, and I believe they are, and I believe most of us would agree to them, then can we apply that to a community? Would a community be stronger because it allowed the introduction of alcohol into spaces where it previously had not? And in deference to the comments of our honorable police chief, you can guarantee there's going to be issues that will come out of businesses that are serving hard alcohol. Frankly, I wasn't as worried about the beer and wine side of it. That typically, the consumption of food during the, imbibing of those has a better effect than it would with an individual consuming 3 or 4 hard drinks during their meal. The other thing I just wanted to add to it is my deference to the integrity of the survey that went out. I know it was an inadvertent error of not including the envelopes. And we did hear from Ms. Wells that it would take another 7,000 votes to come in, but that would presume the same ratios. What you would have to look at in that from a statistical standpoint is the people who elected not to respond because of the absence of those envelopes. Are they leaning toward one demographic or another in voting? And I would suspect that they would not be necessarily as homogenous as the presentation made it. I think it might have made a bigger difference. In short, I think for everybody to feel good about the the integrity of the survey, perhaps we should repeat it and try to iron out some of the things that didn't quite go right on it. Thank you.
Ms. Rice.
I'm Liz Rice. So I'm a mom of a cop, and I can't tell you how many times my son pulls over people and he just hopes that they're not drunk, because he has a higher risk of being shot or harmed, and that's always a fear with a mom of a cop. I also had a brother that died what we call a slow death from liquor. He ended up with brain damage. He was hit by broadsided by a drunk driver, rolled the car and had brain damage, and lots of medication later, and about 10 years after that, he died. He died at the age of 53. I do want to point out that the Highland Mains area was specifically forbidden. That area was, at some council meeting, was forbidden any kind of liquor sales. So it doesn't, I don't know about China Walk, but this is the area that has brought this up. I was really a little bit upset, not really upset, but just concerned with their mailer that went out, because it looked like it was highly supported by the city. And as I've gone door to door, I've had to explain that it was not supported by the city. KSL recently reported that Utah is #1 in a rise in DUIs in the nation, top. Not one that we really want to have. So I just want to make sure that, you understand, my position has never changed. I was very vocal at Candidates Night. I was disappointed at some of the things that weren't discussed, but particularly about liquor and their stand on it. I've had to go through several times with many people and explain each position, which I would just prefer expanding on my position. So again, I'm just really think you better take a good look at that survey and what the outcomes are going to be. I have one constituent that says you cannot let the head of the camel in the tent without letting the whole body of the camel in. Thanks.
Okay. Are there others like to make a comment?
Thank you for being here. This is really hard for me. My name is Bill Haynes, and I live at 11572 North Maple Hollow Court. And we moved here in '08. We have 7 children. By the way, I wanted to thank you for your sacrifice. I know it must be really impacting your family time and everything. But our firstborn was about 14 when a friend of his said, well, you'll do much better in athletics if you have a beer first. And so within one or two beers, he was an alcoholic. And we pretty much know this because I have a lot of relatives and extended family members who suffer from alcoholism. And I wanted to share a statistic. I believe the statistic is 1 in 10 drinkers will become alcoholics, which is pretty high. Well, Stephen was, up until that time, he was the best kid we had. He would help with family outings. And, you know, he wanted to set up the tents, and he helped his brothers and sisters learn how to swim and do all those things. But the drinking just got worse, and it wasn't something that we condoned. We didn't even know about it for years. But in 2021, he drank himself to death. That's what I wanted to share.
Sorry about your son. Thank you. Are there others like to come up and comment?
My name is Delisha Mills, and I was commenting because years ago I read an essay called What is Seen and What is Unseen. And oftentimes when we make decisions, we base it off of what is statistically available and easy to see, and we forget the unintended consequences. I remember when you were first putting commercial into the city, and they said it's not going to travel anywhere, and it's the same thing. Once it starts, it just keeps going. And I haven't seen the tax revenue in our city go down because of it, and the costs and the problems that come with it. I mean, initially you get a boom of money because it's new and there's not upkeep and the infrastructure costs haven't caught up yet. Same thing with new developments. Anytime more houses go in, initially you get a boom, but then it's 10, 15 years later that things come in. And so I'd ask you to consider that there are many unseen consequences by inviting this in, because once again, the developer may start out with one idea, but once the ordinance is changed, you don't have control anymore, and what it turns into is now out of your control. And so I'd ask you to consider that, and the people who came here and have lived here came here oftentimes because of what Highland is and because it's different. If people really want that type of amenities, there's lots of cities nearby that they can go to that do the same thing. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Belle Perez. Wasn't expecting to get up here, but I just want to say, Aaron, you did an amazing job explaining the results of the survey, and thank you for explaining those numbers and pointing them all out. A survey result with a 99% confidence interval and a 2% margin of error is incredible. It's almost unheard of. It means we can move forward with near total confidence that the results of the survey are a representative of the population parameter. And we have to keep in mind that the people getting up and sharing here tonight, myself included, their thoughts are not a representative sample of all of Highland. And I do want to say, my heart goes out to those who've been affected by alcohol abuse. I know how serious that is, and I think all of us probably know and love someone who has been negatively affected by that. I also want to say that as a citizen of Highland myself, and as someone who enjoys an occasional glass of wine with my dinner, I behave responsibly. I have never operated a vehicle under the influence of alcohol. I love my neighbors. I love my city as much as everyone else here does. I also want to continue enjoying the same city that all of us here tonight enjoy. And I would also love to continue to enjoy that city with the option to order an adult beverage if I would like to in this new development. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Doug Courtney. I'm addressing you this evening both as a resident of Highland and as a candidate in our upcoming election. I have said repeatedly that I consider this issue to be one of community values, not of policy. I have said that Highland has a long and consistent history of valuing a city without alcohol sales, and that I would therefore need to be convinced that community values had changed in order to vote in favor of approving such sales. I've said that if the survey responses were less than 55% in favor of alcohol sales, that would not convince me that community values have changed. As you know, 62% of survey responses were in favor of alcohol sales. I've heard some concerns about the trustworthiness of the survey, and this is obviously an important point to me. From a security perspective, city staff has discussed approaches they took to identify and avoid tampering, and I find their methods reasonably sound. I'm convinced that even if there were any, there is no way that it accounts for 25% of the responses to the survey. From an awareness perspective, I understand that some residents may have submitted surveys based on incomplete information, and many did not submit surveys. While this is unfortunate, the same scenarios would likely have taken place if this had been an initiative. And we would not question the initiative because of it. I see no reason to doubt the survey on this basis either. Because of the above, if I'm elected, I intend to cast a vote in favor of approving MNG's response. And I hope that we will hear from all of the candidates on, at this point, what their stand will be. Thank you.
Is there anyone else like to come up and make a public comment?
Well, I wasn't planning to say anything today, but I feel like I just need to say this.
If you can just state your name.
Oh, sorry, Jen Ashcraft. Everyone's talking about this as if this is a decision that the council is able to completely have control over. This is private property, as was pointed out. The developer is choosing what they're going to put in there. What we're really deciding is, do we want more fast food? Do we want more cookie shops? Do we want more quick stops? Do we want more of that? Or do we want something nice that we can enjoy as a community? Alcohol is already here. We're not keeping alcohol out or bringing it in. It is already here. And I feel very sad for the people I have in my family. There's alcohol issues that I could tell stories of too. But what it comes down to, there's a few things. Number one, people who struggle with alcohol and substance abuse are not the people who go to nice restaurants and have a couple glasses of wine. They're people who do so in their own homes with friends, socially, or they become addicts. And then it's a problem. This is not an issue that Highland Mains is going to be bringing. And I just forgot what my other point was. Anyways, but basically that's what we're making a decision. This is not the council's decision of whether we're gonna have development, what kind of development we're gonna have. We have influence. The developer has allowed us, well, they've asked you to make a change, and you guys have allowed us as a city, as residents, to voice. And I think that's awesome. We've had cottage meetings, and at these cottage meetings, we had people who didn't have all the information. Once they got all the information, they're like, oh, can I change my vote? Because I didn't realize all this. So I do think it's representative pretty well of our city. I understand there's a small group of people who feel very, well, not small, but there's a group of people who feel strongly against it. But there's a much larger group that feel in favor of it. I understand there's been talk of a referendum. And I know personally people who have come to me and said, if anybody decides to file for a referendum, we're going to join together and we're going to campaign against a referendum. So it could go longer. I'm just putting it out there so it's known. This really isn't about alcohol. Alcohol's a terrible thing. This is about a nice gathering place for us to come together as a community. And it's what majority of the residents want.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Okay, is there any other comments?
Hi, Mayor and Council. Wesley Warren. I also didn't think I was going to come up, and I still don't know exactly what I'm up here for. I don't know if I need to defend myself as father and husband of one of those households that is, let this evil into my own home and making all these horrible decisions. I read through all 92 pages of the comments and was disheartened by the amount of comments that levy such contentious and hurtful allegations of lower morals, lower values, lower standards by anyone who consumes alcohol. I've heard a million times it's, hate the sin, not the sinner. It's a real convenient thing to say. I'm similar to Doug. The biggest issue for me was reconciling Highland's founding values. The public safety thing, the health thing, everything else, we have hard and fast statistics that tell us, despite all of the anecdotes and the truly tragic stories, we have actual data that tells us that this won't be an issue. But Highland and its founding values was of great importance to me. I feel a deep obligation and a desire to honor and preserve the Highland that was created 50 plus years ago. I'm really interested in the Highland Historical Society since it was founded in 2015. They have so many fascinating histories of Highland about the old homesteaders and getting electricity in 1932 and incorporating in 77 and great stories about the Highland Fling over on 10400 by Mitchell Hollow. And I do believe that deviating from the original intent shouldn't be done lightly, but sometimes values lose their value. We have numerous instances in just our country's history alone when tradition and old values needed to be changed or updated or sometimes completely buried in as big a hole as we could bury or dig. And I'd like to think that Highland's values are more substantial and virtuous than simply who and what it excludes. Highland should be known for what and who it is, the kind of people that settled here, and that same spirit that still is here in the city. I don't think Highland is a place that defines itself by who it excludes and what it doesn't allow. It's such a negative badge to wear as a city. And I don't have much more to say than that. It's just been an interesting experience at this point. But I sure thank all of you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come up and address? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and we'll close this item, which was just a presentation. There's no vote on this item. It was just a discussion only. It is anticipated this will be coming back in the first part of January for the council then to make a decision on what to happen there on alcohol sales in Highland. We'll now move on to item number 3, which are consent items. We have the first consent item is number 3A, which is approval of the meeting minutes from September 12th, 2023, and we have an action item of the annual crack ceiling projects. Would anyone like to pull any of those items?
If not, I'd like to make a motion, Mayor.
Okay.
I move that the Highland City Council approve consent item 3A, which is the approval of the meeting minutes, from September 12th, 2023, and also 3B, which is the annual crack seal project, where we're sealing many cracks in many highways.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Brittany. Is there any further discussion needed? If not, let's go ahead and go to vote. We're doing it by electronic voting, correct?
We don't have electronic voting up.
Is electronic voting working?
Kim, you voted against the minutes?
Unbelievable. She's always doing that.
It does not appear that it's working.
Okay, we will go ahead to a voice. We're going to start with a voice vote, and we'll start here with Kim.
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
And Ron.
Yes.
5-0. We'll now move on to item number 4, which is an action item. This will have a public hearing, which is the Armstrong land swap property sale and right-of-way vacation, I'm gonna say vacation, but that's, I guess, what it is. We'll go ahead. Is there a discussion? Who's gonna be handling that? Is that you, Jay? So Jay, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and handling that item.
Item number 4.
Item number 4.
So what we have here tonight, I guess we are considering a couple of items. First is a vacation of a right-of-way, but it is being done at the request of Mr. Ron Armstrong, who's here tonight. No, I'll present first, and then. What was that? I'm sorry. I'll present first, and then the mayor would let you
Well,
speak.
I'll invite you up when it comes time. We'll go ahead and have the staff do their presentation, and then we'll ask you to come up. Okay.
I was just indicating that you're here. So he lives at 5000 Country Club Drive, which is shown here on your map. This is his property here. And looking at the aerial image, you would think that the property boundaries here would be rather straightforward. And if you thought that, you would be wrong.
That's because it's Highland.
This red figure here more accurately portrays what Mr. Armstrong's property boundaries are. You can see on the east and south sides, it's relatively normal between him and his neighbors. But then on the west and the north, you have the boundary going and encompassing the sidewalk almost to the street, and on the west side, cutting through the grass, eliminating a large portion of the grass and the tree there. And so what Mr. Armstrong is requesting is that he might be able to purchase this section of land here where the tree is, represented by this yellow trapezoid, because I can't draw as well as Kelly could, so I'm just using shapes. This is a little more accurate of what is being requested here. In the city's review of Mr. Armstrong's request, it was determined by Public Works that with that section represented in the orange that he owns, that encompasses the sidewalk, it would make more sense for the city to have that section, and then the city would be able to swap with him a comparable number of square feet represented by that orange section, and then sell the rest of it. So you have the blue area, which is 1,449.3 square feet, and the orange area is 594.4 square feet. And so what you would have is the city receiving the orange part and Mr. Armstrong receiving the blue part. So that is the land swap / sale component of our discussion tonight. Because the blue portion is a utility easement, a right-of-way, it does need to be vacated before it can be sold to Mr. Armstrong. And so that's that is the purpose of the public hearing tonight.
By vacated, could you define that for me?
Vacated as
I mean, there's nothing utilities there now that you have to take out. You're just
Right.
vacating the use of it.
Correct.
Okay.
It's
I
a
just-
right of way. So state law gives a special definition of you have a normal easement that might be for access or whatever. And there's a special type of easement called a right of way that only governments get to own. And this is not a utility corridor. It's just a right of way because it's considered part of the street, even though it's not used as any part of a street. So
Okay.
in order to get rid of that easement, we have to vacate the right of way, which means we remove
I just
that-
want to make sure you weren't
that
pulling out
status from it. We're not
utilities.
pulling anything out of it. There's no utilities. Public Work looked at it. It just means we're saying that's not a right of way. We're not using it as a street. And then we have to deal with the title of the property.
Wonderful.
Are there any easement? I mean, we're not doing an easement agreement or anything here. Once he sells that, he can do whatever he wants. Or are there easements still there on that property?
Nope, nothing left.
Okay.
He'll own
Yeah.
fee title.
Yeah. So to vacate the right-of-way, the city's portion to be exchanged as public right-of-way, as I said, And as Rob said, there's state code that governs how we have to do this. We went through a public notice process. 10 days prior to this meeting, we mailed a public notice to everyone within 500 feet of the Armstrong property, and then posted a sign on his yard to make everybody aware of that. And then we're also required to have a public hearing, which is what we'll be doing tonight. Staff's review of the requirements. This portion of land contains no public infrastructure and is not needed by the city. Mr. Armstrong's part of the land exchange is useful to the city as it is property that is normally considered public right-of-way, as in that sidewalk. Point number 2, good cause exists for the vacation. Point 3, the public interest or any person will not be materially injured by the proposed vacation. 4, the proposed amendment meets all the requirements of the development code. And staff determined that all of those criteria are satisfied.
So that staff, Rob, when we make this motion, is this not what council has to determine when they're making their motion?
Correct. So you would either agree with this, or you would make a different findings if you felt something was off with that, or add on to those findings. These are kind of the recommended findings based on staff's review.
Anything else?
No.
We'll ask the applicant, would you like to come up and address the council? Is there anything you'd like to share with the council? Is there like anything you'd like to address with the city council?
Well, the one thing I want to address, because this obviously happened 50 years ago, I guess, and nobody seems to know why that the city owned half my driveway and I owned the sidewalk, and on the other side, I spent over $3,000 to get all the drawings done. So my request was a little relief on the purchase price of this 500 feet that's left over.
So is your request, what you're saying is because you had to go get a survey to be able to get this all straightened out, you're saying, hey, you had some expense to be able to get this, but you're also getting the property. I mean, you're actually able to get the property that you've not had in the front yard, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me make a little comment. This neighborhood was designed before the city existed.
Yeah.
Okay, and so this was done probably through the county or something, because there was not a city at that time.
Oh.
I think that we need to clarify that, because these neighborhoods were annexed into the city basically when it was created.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We spent, like I said, $3,000 trying to straighten out what should have been straightened out a long time ago, I think. You know.
Did the city
And maybe
have any-
to add on to that point, the proposal is that we're treating this as an orphan parcel. So essentially, say he's getting about 1,000, he's getting about 600. You subtract that out, he's paying for the extra 400 odd square feet at the orphan parcel rate, which is $471 a square foot. So the total cost to buy that's not being swapped 1 for 1 is $2,142.58.
What was the expense on the city side? Did we have a lot of staff time? Did we have to do any surveying? I mean, naturally, we had to go get our employees to go look to see. I'm just saying, you're asking for relief. What was the expense side on the city? We've had
We
to have
sent
staff.
Public Works staff to go review it. We spent time reviewing the request ourselves for development code issues, preparing the notices, making sure it all went through. And typically with orphan parcel sales, we do require the property owner to do the plat amendment type process, as it's not the city's, so it's not a cost on the taxpayers.
Did we charge a plat amendment fee?
We haven't gotten to that point yet, but this is just the normal sale transaction. So this is, as with most orphan parcels, we require the surveying cost to be borne by the person who's buying it at the orphan parcel.
And then do you have to do a special agreement for this, Rob? So was there other things you had to do? I'm just trying to understand what the expense was on the city side.
What we'll do next is we'll do it like with all orphan parcels. We have our standard property sale agreement that we'll use. You're going to adopt an ordinance that will vacate this as a right-of-way and tell staff you're fine to sell this to Mr. Armstrong at what we've proposed is at the normal orphan parcel rate, and then we'll go sign that contract with him that Mayor you'll sign later. Staff's time is just involved in reviewing it and making sure it all goes through, and the normal process we do with any orphan sale. Orphan parcel sale. We don't sell orphans.
Rob, what?
Sorry, Councilmember Bills.
That was a good one, Rob.
You were saying?
Marriage has been good for you.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, what happens if you don't do this now and it continues as if it has been for?
Oh, what started it, we're moving there because we're living across the street from my daughter. And that's the reason why we purchased this house. And I have classic cars and I needed to add a third garage, which I can't even begin to do because I don't own my driveway even. So I'm just.
So you found this out as
after
during the purchase. Okay.
We had a sit-down meeting with Mr. Armstrong. I think Jay and I did, and it was basically how he could do the addition he wanted. And we looked at it and said, "You own a very weird lot that I have never seen before." And we tried to figure out how to fit the addition around on the back or the side, and we just said it doesn't really work. Maybe the council will consider, and that's when they came to you, and you told us to go ahead and look at that.
Right. It's understandable.
Is there anything else you'd like to discuss with the council before we do have public? Anything else you'd like to bring before the council before we have public hearing? Okay.
I mean, I'm just trying to balance my 3,000 versus the 2,100, right?
Okay, thank you. Since this is a public hearing item, at this time we'll open this item up for public hearing. If there's anyone who'd like to come up and address this item, is the public sale, the right-of-way, and the property swap. Is there anyone who'd like to come up and address the city council on this item? Seeing none, we'll now close the public hearing on item number 4A, and we will bring it back to council.
I'd just like to say I support this 100%. So if I understand the question, Mr. Armstrong, if I understand the question, you say you've spent some thousands of dollars, we're going to charge another $2,000. You would just soon not pay the $2,000. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I'd rather.
Because the motion is that we'd go ahead and do this, but then you'd have to pay for the orphan property, and it's a swap and all this
I
stuff.
think we have to be careful is what
Yeah.
we've done with orphan properties, how we've had
Right.
that process. If you see this differently than what a different orphan parcel sell, or is this an orphan parcel sell? And that's what we've done in the past. We've had the person pay for a survey and help with some of the title. That's what I'm saying. That the process we've done in the past is what we've had.
I'll also add, I think the cost was higher because he didn't just have the property surveyed to get a legal description. You see in the as one of the exhibits what looks like almost an updated plat map. It's virtually ready to go at that point. It was one of the attachments, shows legal description, then the difference in the actual lot. So he had it fully engineered and ready to go. That's a normal survey would cost me, $1,000, $1,200. Having the engineering to put together the plat takes more work. So that's why that cost is there.
So I guess I just want to clarify this. So if we did follow the motion and sell this for $2,100, are there additional costs that he's going to incur to get this totally through the plat, or has he already paid those?
We would still have to amend the plat if we wanted to combine that all into one lot. All this does is give us the basis in order to write the deeds to exchange property.
What that means is this extra parcel, he'll get a separate property tax notice from Utah County, which that's one thing. And then you go and you pay to try to combine it all, and I think that's what you're talking about. And that's because you have it. And others are going to have to do that also. Any others that have this extra parcel, if they want to combine it with their lot. If not, this will be a value.
They get a separate
they'll get a
property
separate
tax.
Property tax notice, which
if they don't combine it, but if you combine it, you got to pay more money to combine it.
Yes.
So
But
you
it
can
is a
save more money
relatively
in other
quick.
places.
We've updated our code to allow those lot combinations to be much more streamlined, and so staff can approve it. So we don't have to go through the whole process when all you're doing is joining your little parcels that you already own. So it's one more step to do, but most of the work is done for that at this point.
And what is the cost?
$550 according to our fees.
So it'd be additional $550. Okay.
I'm sorry, sir. So can you just clarify for me? So did you find out about the odd size of the lot after you had purchased it or before you purchased it? After you had purchased it.
Well, I never dreamed that I didn't own my driveway, right?
We have a lot of situations in Highland where people never dream their lot is what it is. Welcome.
It was a county before it was a city, and that's the rub.
Is there a motion, council?
So, Rob, let me just ask a question.
Yes.
If I make this motion and say we're going to do this and he has to pay $2,000, can I put in that motion that he shouldn't have to pay additional costs? Because, I mean, this little piece of property is costing him a lot, and the city gets, you know, part of the property back.
So you would ask, so the motion would be approve this as presented, but ask that future, say,
No
plat
additional
amendment-
costs, which I
lot
think
combination
we just
be
heard about,
waived.
yeah.
You could make that motion. We would honor it as staff, of course.
I'd like to throw out another possibility that we would waive the 2,142 and charge the 550. And where I'm coming from is that this, if you look at this, it was obviously a county, it was in the county at the time, the city didn't exist. The city comes in and we have this development go in, they have it surveyed and it was done incorrectly. And it just seems to me that that's an awful heavy burden. I would think a trade for property, we encroached, if you will, on his property. We didn't, but whoever did that survey and approved that plat, we approved a plat for this property that had some problems with it. It had a sidewalk that was already there when the plat went in. I assume it was there because this is 50 years ago. So I'm kind of more in favor of just a discussion at this point of waiving doing a trade-off exchange and then saying pay the $550 for the plat amendment.
So let me ask you now, a resident, are we going to give out property to all the residents that have some, I'm just saying, you have to, your responsibility, this is your,
right.
We're over responsible for the property to make sure we get fair value, and you know, and you can say, okay, this is our fair value exchange. That's what you have to kind of decide.
And what I'm saying is I believe this is a significant exception to what we will normally find where we had, where there is encroachment. I don't know if, I hope we don't have anywhere we've encroached on the
Well, I don't know if we
person's property.
encroached as much as this is their property line, and then they've went, and because they didn't have to come and put the landscape and the tree there. I'm just saying, I'm just bringing it about. You know,
Yeah,
so we don't know
but the
who
sidewalk goes all the way into his property.
The sidewalk does?
The sidewalk
up
does.
on the
over
left
here.
side.
And listen, this was done before the city. We don't know all the records.
I know that. And that's my
It's-
point.
it's-
That's why I see this as an exception, but, you know, that's my view.
So I can see where you're coming from, Ron, and I agree in many ways with that sentiment. I guess having been on the council and the mayor too, and other members up here, we spend extensive discussions talking about similar issues, but it's usually involved with the open space neighborhoods. And so I think what the mayor's concern is that I'm hearing is if we make this exception, how does it affect when other people come to us? I mean, I think it's kind of an unfair situation. I certainly approve of the swap, and I would say, you know, if we charge him this, I just don't think there should be additional fees. So I'm kind of in same sentiment. I just would have different price on it. So I'd like to hear what the other council members think.
I'd be in support of that same position, Scott. The other concern is what you've had in the past, but then also looking forward into the future. Are there other scenarios like this, and would we be setting precedents for that? So I think the concession is that you make the swap and we waive the fee. And
Or the plot map change, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I can go along with that. I was just looking at it as another possibility.
Well, no, and we are doing, this has one uniqueness to it. We're doing a property swap. Does that make sense? Most of the
Right. Others
we-
haven't been
We've
there.
not had a property. And we do, this probably does benefit because we're getting back the sidewalk, which we've not owned, the public
Yeah.
uses. I mean, however, the property owner's also getting a bit, you know, we're doing a trade for trade with property, and then they're getting plus more property.
And I could argue that the sidewalk's worth more than the tree.
I understand. We're just like, I think what the concern is, okay, we have a lot of these going on, and you know, are we going to waive it here? Will we waive those others, which might be actually something that's amenable, you know, because if you're in an open space, you want to combine that lot, and also you might not get a lot of them, and you know, it might be something we look at that way too. I'm not against even saying that we apply it and how it goes in the open space if they do a partial.
Right.
I have a question for Rob, Aaron, Mayor, other. What do you anticipate? Do you anticipate that that orphan parcel price will go up or down in January?
It goes, it's going to go based off of property
It's
tax.
going to go based off of property values.
I don't own property in Utah County. My property value went up, but at a decreasing rate from last year. So I would anticipate it would go up, but we had a huge jump from last year, from 2020's rate to 2023's rate. It was like 3 something and jumped to 471. I would anticipate it probably go up and maybe to like $5, you know, a smaller jump.
It also, the county does look at these type of parcels and evaluate them different. It depends. It's all going to be on comp sales. How we come up with the value, it's 25% of the Utah County assessed value. We've got a number of properties that we've said this, we'll earmark the following properties throughout the city. And then each year we go and look at those, if it's 10, 15, or 20, and then we say we'll take 25% of that value is how we come up with it. So it's a 25% discount of the property tax value. Now, I think most people would never sell their home at the property tax value. so we're trying to be fair.
What I should have done is obviously had the surveyor only cut out 500 feet.
Yes, you're right. You should have done that.
But it's expensive, I've learned, to get surveyors.
I'm in agreement with Councilmember Smith.
Okay, ready for a motion, or you want to chime in, Kim?
I mean, I just wanted to say I'm in agreement with Brittany and possibly Councilmember Smith.
Okay, and John, I heard John and actually.
And John,
Let's
yeah.
just get a motion done on this because we got still.
Okay,
She's in
I'll
agreement
make the
with everybody
motion.
but
I move
Ron.
that the Highland City Council approve the ordinance that vacates the proposed right-of-way at Alpine Country Club, Lot 14, and 5000 Country Club Drive, Highland, Utah, and authorizes the sale of the net property for $2,142.58, with the addendum that there will be no further charges to the citizen.
For a lot combination.
Yeah, for lot-to-lot combination and plat changes and things. I think he's paid more than enough. And I think that's fair.
Stephanie, so do you understand what that motion is?
Okay.
Okay.
No
I'll
further
second the
charges.
motion.
Okay, Ron, you seconded the motion. So we have a motion by Scott, second by Ron. Okay, we'll now start with Brittany.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Ron. Yes. John, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
That was good. You caught it.
You have all these rhyming names.
Well, we lost Tim and Kim.
I know.
Now we got Ron and John.
That's a problem.
So if I can clarify then, when Mr. Armstrong comes to do his plat lot combination, we will waive the $550.
That is correct.
Thank
There will
you.
be no plat.
No further charges.
Mayor, before you move on to the next item, I'm going to need to leave for a family thing for about 10 minutes in a few minutes, so don't think I'm rude when I step out. It's a thing that's kind of a big deal to my daughter, and I'm going to be there for this one. So
you're saying it's time to be a mom, you'll step down to be a mom and then come back as a council.
that's right. And I'll be gone for 10 minutes.
Go cheer on, go.
I know, she's not here yet. I'm watching, but I just wanted you to know I'm not being rude, Donna. I care about.
Okay. The Lone Peak Band has won the state championship for the small area bands. They are going to be coming into Highland. I believe the police department is going to be escorting them in. And Councilmember Bills has a daughter, correct, that is in that band, and she wants to go cheer the daughter on. So I think we all could be supportive as
Thank
you.
Take 15 minutes, not 10.
Okay, as we go on, we have another action item number 4B, which is the library carpet. And with Donna, you're going to give us a discussion on that.
I don't have slides. I don't think. Okay, so as part of our fiscal year 2024 budget, we approved, included $35,000 to replace the carpet in the library. Now, the reason that this carpet needs to be replaced, most of the carpet is original with the library. It was installed 15 years ago, and it is now showing wear past snags, stains, and age. Now, the carpet in the children's department is not that old, but it has much higher traffic, and it is also in poor condition. we we sent the carpet replacement out to bid and received 3 bids. The one that we have selected was the installer that will install the carpet around the existing shelves. And it was the lowest cost, and will also require the least amount of extra staff time as far as moving books and moving shelves. It will be the least expensive way of.
Can I ask a
replacing
question
carpet.
here? You're leaving the shelves where they are, but
Yes.
they're currently not ADA compliant, is that right?
So the ADA requirement is 36 inches between shelves. If you measure between the metal and the metal of the shelves, like the shelves are metal with wooden ends,
Yeah.
from metal to metal, they're actually ADA compliant. What's not compliant are the wooden ends. And so in order to bring this up to compliance, we need to replace those ends, and that will be a future issue that I will bring before the council.
But will carpet be under those wings? Because you're
we
saying
will
you're just
take
going.
the ends off when we carpet
Okay, okay.
and replace them with thinner ends so that the whole thing is ADA compliant.
Wonderful, thank you.
As part of the flooring replacement, we plan to replace the flooring in the children's department with vinyl rather than carpet. We're doing this because of issues with trying to keep it clean, sanitation. And there's been some concern that this will make the children's room a little louder. It won't absorb the sound as well. But the children's room is always a little bit louder. And it's separated from the rest of the library with pretty thick walls that we don't think it will affect the general noise level in the library. The bid, we haven't chosen carpet yet. We've included a $30 per square yard allowance for the carpet, which would give us a good quality industrial type carpet and vinyl. But the award might vary a little. I mean, the final cost may vary a little bit depending on the exact kind of flooring that we choose. So there were 3 bids solicited. We are recommending that we adopt the one from Spectra, which was the lowest cost, but also had more service than the second highest. The third one included lifting the shelves and carpeting under the shelves, but we've determined that that's not necessary.
Good, you answered that. I was wondering, why was there such a large discrepancy?
Yes. Originally, we thought we needed to move the shelves to make them ADA, but as I was very careful with a measuring tape, we can't really move them, because if we move them to allow for those wider ends, then we start running up against pillars. And so they really are the only place they can be. And so we don't really need to move them.
So Donna, help me. Has this been part of the strategic plan? I mean, when did it come up? Is this just, are we replacing carpet because it's coming up on age? Are we replacing carpet because it's a need and we've seen a lot of wearing of the carpet? What's kind of facilitating the carpet change at this time?
So it has been in our strategic plan for the last couple of years, and we've been saving up to do the replacement. The main issue is that it's worn out, and also that it's very compacted with dirt. It's not cleanable anymore. I have one of those carpet shampooers, and even the week after we have the carpet cleaned, I'll take that carpet shampooer and still be pulling up just black. And so it's the wear and also the fact that it's just completely compacted with dirt.
I'd just like to make a comment. The public library, the community center, this chamber, this is the face of Highland, the public face. And I think it's good to be frugal and careful, but I think we need to maintain things that look nice. And I think a lot of times that engenders some respect, because when we don't maintain our things, then I think it kind of allows other people not to respect city property. That's just a personal opinion. So I'm all in favor of this. I actually helped get the carpet in the children's library 8 years ago and different things. And it wasn't meant to be lifelong because it wasn't a very expensive carpet tile. But I support this, and I think you've been saving up for it, and you're coming in almost 9,000 below what you had budgeted, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of that may be taken up by getting the narrower shelf ends. But yeah, so even with the additional shelf ends, I hope to still stay under the original budget.
So if there's no other discussion, I'd like to make a motion, if that'd be okay, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I move that the Highland City Council approve the contract with Spectra Contract Flooring for an amount up to $26,248 and authorize the city administrator to sign the contract documents.
Motion by Scott,
I'll second.
second by Kim. Okay, we will now start with the first vote with Scott.
Yes.
We'll then go to John.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
5-0. Okay, at this time, it looks like Councilmember Bills will be stepping out. It is now moving on to the expedited items, number 5A and B. This is meant as to be more of a brief discussion. The council should have already looked at this and already be aware of the items. If there's any items that need more detail, you can ask. Item number 5A, which is the plat amendment to Horseshoe Bend, Plat A, Lot 3 and 4. Anything we need to discuss there?
Thank you, Mayor. To quickly go over this, at 6499 and 6517 West Avery Avenue, in the image you can see before you, the blue line represents the current property boundary between the two lots. The owners of lots 3 and 4 desire to adjust the property line so that it now resembles the orange line that's kind of jagged, making a little bit of a Utah shape there. So that the section outlined in red, which is 4,896 square feet, would go to the owner of Lot 4. Lot 3 is currently 33,116 square feet in size. Reducing it by the amount requested would bring it to a little over 28,000 square feet, which is normally not okay in an R140 zone. However, the Horseshoe Bend development is an open space subdivision, which is defined in the city's code as a subdivision where the city's density requirement is achieved through perpetual open space. There's just larger sections of open space within that development that kind of makes up for what is allowed as smaller lots. So as such, the lot must at least meet the 20,000 square foot requirement, which is a minimum for all of our zoning sizes, and it does meet that. And so once again, presenting to you the Highland Development Code, the 4 points that this needs to meet. Neither the public interest nor any person will be materially injured by the proposed amendment. There is good cause for the amendment. All easements for water and sewer facilities are preserved. No public right-of-way is being vacated, and the proposed amendment meets all requirements of the Development Code. In staff's analysis, we found that neither the public interest nor any person will be injured by the proposed plat amendment. Both parties have agreed to this plat amendment. 2, there is good cause for the amendment. The proposed plat amendment conforms to the requirements of the Development Code, and the amendment will allow the applicant to develop their property as desired. 3, all easements for water and sewer facilities as outlined in Schedule B of the 6499 West Avery Lane property title, which was included in their application as part of the packet that you received, are transferred to the new property owner and maintained. So nothing's changes with that. It just switches ownership, but that status doesn't change, so that is preserved as well. Number 4, no public right-of-way needs vacating for this amendment. That it's fine. There's no utilities like there was in the last consideration. There's no public hearing needed. And then finally, number 5, the lot line adjustment. Both parcels in question will still meet the minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet for an open space subdivision.
I'm sorry, I have to challenge the point that it has to be 20,000 square feet in an R120 and 30,000 for an R130. It's my understanding if you have a 10-acre development, it's R140, you would have 10 lots. An R120, you would have 20 lots, maybe 21 lots. But it's not a per lot requirement. It's a requirement for the entire development. And this change doesn't seem to affect the R120 zoning because we still end up with X number of lots within the total parcel that was developed at the time. Am I misunderstanding that? It's
Well, this is an open space
Yeah.
subdivision, so
The-
there may be
So it's
some lots less than
R140
20,000.
overlay, yeah.
Exactly.
The open space subdivision circumvents that requirement, the normal requirement that you're speaking to for a normal R140 development. But with the open space subdivision, that requirement doesn't apply.
right. But my point is that the statement that the lot size has to be 20,000 square feet, I don't believe is correct.
And I guess what Ron's saying, I think it's a good question. Where are we getting that in an open space subdivision, they have to have a minimum lot of 20,000? Is it, because I think, the reason we're asking is I think we've all seen, or some live in the open space subdivisions that have lot sizes smaller than 20,000 square feet. And I think that's
Right.
where
It's
we're
the
just wondering-
total development that's got to meet the R120
It's the whole
or
development.
R130 or R140 requirement.
So
Not
this,
any given lot.
This may be a bit of ignorance more on our part because we haven't dealt with
The open
permitting
space?
an open space subdivision in a very long time. But the way the R1, there's still a code. We're actually going to talk about this later tonight. There's still a development code, a subdivision option for open space that just can't really apply, but it's still written in the code. And it basically says you apply the density of the underlying zone, but you can shrink lots basically so you have the same number of units,
Right.
but you have open space. And R140 has a requirement that the minimum lot size is 20,000 square feet.
Oh.
So our understanding was that would still apply, and that might not be, again, I've dealt with open space subdivisions on the back end, never on the permitting side. So that might have been a misunderstanding of how they worked on my part.
Yeah.
Regardless, I don't think there's any problem with the amendment because they're all fine.
Well, even without open space, an R140 requires 40,000 square feet for a lot to be developed, but the lot doesn't have to be that. That includes the roads, that includes sidewalks.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, okay, in R140, let's assume you have 400,000 square feet, because that might be the easiest. You can have 10 lots. You can have 25% of those lots be 20,000 square feet, but you can have other lots larger. And so it's that combination of all of it is how it comes in. And so it's the combination. And I think where you're saying, hey, when I looked at this, we keep saying the open space is an R140 overlay. Well, they happen to have open space that they gave, and I think when we've looked at it, that the council must have negotiated in some of these to get more amenities in certain areas and gave more density. I mean, as we're looking, not every open space subdivision is all equal.
No, they're all different.
And that's
But-
where we struggle.
And it might have been an R120 subdivision where the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. If you did that as an open space, you would have much smaller lots with more open space.
And there's a lot of our open space that have 13,000 square foot lots, but they have open space around them.
Right.
So,
To be honest, I had to text Kelly and say, what is going on with this division? And she pointed out the open space factor to me. And so.
But with that,
we're-
what they're still meeting, you're saying, hey, if they were 20,000, they still meet that requirement. And so
Yeah.
if we're doing this lot, where they're moving out lot lines, we're still fine.
Our interpretation of the code said that it still needed to meet the underlying minimum of 20,000 feet. I was relying on my attorney.
Yeah.
His
Well,
interpretation.
I appreciate the work you've done on this, and I appreciate Ron's comments because he's right on, and so is the mayor. But when I looked at these plots, I thought, well, this is kind of an odd shaped one. I'm sure it's kind of a negotiation between the two. But, you know, the neighborhood's Horseshoe Bend, it looks more like a horseshoe. So I'm going to vote for it.
There's a if you look on the picture, there's a weird utility station that's in there. And so I
Right.
think the property owner who owns it, you can see that those two little circles. There's some utility work in there that the city has, and I think maybe some other public entity. So the property owner who owned it didn't really want to include that because they can't really do much. They just fenced it off. So I think the adjacent property owner, the Fransons, who are here, who can speak to it, looked at that and said, all right, they've already fenced it off. They've had a fence there for a long time. Why don't we just make it formalize what we've been doing in practice, which is it's considered part of our yard. And he can obviously speak to that better than I can, but that's my understanding.
This is I have several neighbors that we have went, and I've even done a property lot adjustments going, hey, I'm a pie shape going back, and I've taken a corner out of your property. How about, and we went and got surveys and straightened it all up and did property swap and paid. I know several neighbors. Ron Christensen's coming in. I don't know if you're working with him right now. He's done several where some of the neighbors say, hey, I don't need that corner, and he wants it for his horse pasture, so they're just straightening up lots in the way the neighbors get agreed on.
I'm Dave Ellis, and I actually own Lot 3, and we're selling it to Ted Franson, who owns Lot 4. So just to kind of illustrate it, this is my backyard, and this is what we're selling. So, and he's completely right. So you can see the double gates here. That's an easement that the Provo City Water, or the river.
Provo River Water users.
Provo River Water users.
Yeah,
in the
that they
past,
have. And so those lovely chain link fence gates have to stay there forever to be able to access the trucks to get into there. And so we just fenced around it, 5 years ago when we bought the house. And Ted did the same thing. And, Ted has a desire to build a structure back there, and I am absolutely delighted to be able to bequeath that part of our lot to him.
But it has some hindrance on it where they have to be able to get access. So there's
he won't be changing any of that at all. His proposed structure was just going to tap my property line, and so that's why we wanted to do this.
Okay.
We have them.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the City Council adopt the findings in the staff report and approve the plat amendment to Horseshoe Bend Plat A, lots 3 and 4, as discussed.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Kim. We'll now start with the vote. We'll start with John.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
4-0. At this time, Councilmember Brittany Bills is not present. We'll now move on to 5B, which is the cemetery maintenance building. I believe Andy, who is sick today.
He is. So I'm filling in for Andy.
So Jeff?
Yeah, thank you for your time tonight, Mayor and Council. If you can go, I guess we're on that slide. Next slide. Sorry. Yeah. So we've discussed this in September and October. It's a maintenance facility shed or building to be located in the Highland City Cemetery for use for staff to house the equipment and different things for the functions of the cemetery. Can you go to the next slide? So the proposed building is a 40 by 40 metal building. We did include some color selections on there. They're not really extremely visible in this, but it kind of follows standards of the rest of our city facilities with a green kind of a forest green look on the roof with kind of a buckskin sidewash on the walls, just like a lot of our pump houses and structures that we're currently building. So we're looking for that direction if things go through, if you guys are okay with those colors. Oops, sorry. I went too far. But here, you can...
You're going to have a dress
you can
code
go
now at
that
the cemetery.
It's not working out for me. So do you guys have any further questions or discussion that you want to have about this building or any comments that need to be addressed?
I think we've discussed this a lot. And so I'd like to make a motion. And the reason I'm making the motions tonight is many on the council are running for election, and I don't want them to have to make any controversial motions. So I move that the Highland City Council approve in the collective amount of $74,023.40 the construction contracts for a maintenance building at the Highland City Cemetery and authorize the city administrator to sign the necessary contracts.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Kim. We'll now start with Ron.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
And John.
Yes.
Councilmember Brittany Bills is still not present. We'll now move on to discussion items only, which is a city's dress code, number 6A, Aaron Wells.
Okay.
We went from 3 lines to 4 pages?
Well, it depends on what you're counting that's going in the policy. Just the document itself is only 1 page. We have some supplementary material that's unique to departments that is each about a page. So, Mr. Courtney's not wrong in that. I mean, it absolutely has gone a lot bigger, and I prefer simple policies. I really do. Currently, so this is what it says. It's 3 lines, essentially, present yourself appropriately, clean, neat dress. Will you go to the next slide, Brooklyn? In more recent months, honestly, we've been talking about this. I've been talking about this with employees since July. I've noticed that I felt like our employees, and they're amazing employees, but I just felt like I wanted to raise the level of dress that I was seeing among the organization. When I talked about this with my executive staff, and my goal is ultimately, I feel that we are a representation of the city. And when people come to do business with the city, I want them to not have any kind of concern about our appearance and have that detract from what we're trying to accomplish. And I get that I'm a bit conservative in this. I will totally own that. It is part of who I am, and I understand that. But I tried to make some concessions that I felt like were appropriate. Anyway, and as I talked to executive staff about this, they really told me that if they were going to have conversations with their subordinates saying, hey, I want you to improve your dress, they needed something specific. And so this is where I got to be the high school principal and kind of outline some rules, and it like totally flashed me back to junior high and say, this is how I expect you to dress. And so that's the reason that we went to a specific policy. So overall, so the manual itself, the first attachment you saw, gave kind of the overall guidance that says, clean, neat, be professional. It kind of addressed tattoos as a whole. It addressed body modifications. It addressed piercings. And then there were 3 additional attachments, essentially, that gave more specific guidance to different departments, because what I expect myself to dress in is very different than what our field workers dress in, right? So if you're a city hall worker, if you're a library worker, a public works staff worker, we gave kind of more specific guidance there. So I welcome your feedback, ultimately, Mayor and Council. What this would, ultimately, it'll come to you for vote to vote on the 1-page policy overview, and then the individual, the City Hall, Library, Public Works ones, honestly, they'd just be administrative that we would update internally as needed.
Now, Aaron, before you brought this, you've talked with staff, and so this is not a surprise.
That's a good point. Yes.
This is not surprising staff. You've had conversations with them.
I started talking to them about it in June, and they've seen, so Donna's already had her policy in place for quite a while. The administrative team, or City Hall team, I should say, has seen there. And actually, based on their feedback, I made a couple changes. I said, hey, you know what? Athletic shoes don't bother me as long as they're clean and neat. Or leggings was a conversation. Leggings don't bother me if it's underneath a tunic or a long shirt, kind of a situation, or under a skirt, right, where it's kind of more of a warmth type of a thing. But leggings in place of pants is not acceptable, and per the dress code that I've outlined. So I made some concessions in that to try to make it friendlier to employees. Colored jeans are fine during the Monday through Wednesday.
What about joggers?
Oh, gall. You know what? My kids who have to wear uniforms to their charter school can wear joggers. So
what's joggers?
They're like a tapered pant that goes there's like a gathering there.
Is that not approved?
You can really dress them up.
Yeah, you can dress them up.
Aaron, does this apply to council as well?
Yes.
This applies to employees who are under my supervision. So no, it does not apply to you.
If you'd like to have it as a council.
Well,
that would be your own code that you would set.
I'm a little facetious on this, but I think my only concern, and I've done this with employees as well, is that it turns into a long list of do's and don'ts and thou shalts and thou shalt nots. And one thing I was even thinking, and I read this and then dressed accordingly today so that I would be, but you can have a really nice dressy jean too, like without question, and I would have no problem with that you know, from what you're trying to accomplish, which
Yeah.
is we're representative of the city. So that's just my only, I don't know, concern on it, is that I think otherwise this document could get really long.
It could.
With the things that we can and cannot do.
And honestly, some of my executive staff expressed that same comment, that they don't mind jeans. And
Yeah.
for me, blue jeans are too casual. Even if even a dark blue jean to me, and again, I tend to be more
Yeah.
conservative in this area. And
Like
that's
I wear
how
to
was
very
raised.
actually decently formal business dinners. I
Yeah.
will wear a dress jacket, a
And-
dress shirt, but nicer jeans with nice shoes, tucked in with a
Yep.
belt, and I think I never feel underdressed in that environment. So, anyways, but where my only feedback would maybe be on the kind of more obvious ones, which is like the tattoos that are on the face and the neck, the tongue rings, those types of things are the ones that I feel like could absolutely go on the list. And then there's general guidelines, that are maybe a little bit looser, but still get across what you're trying to accomplish, so that somebody's not finding the loophole and wanting to come in their sweats, right, and lounge clothing. I don't know.
So maybe the department policies we've made, maybe make those a bit more general and guidelines, so it's not so much a do, don't, can I find what I want to wear on this list kind of a thing. That's fair.
So I'd like to make a comment. I appreciate all your work on this, and basically I support 95% of it, different things. I read an article recently where there's kind of a concern that in America we become very, very casual about the way we dress. And the article made this interesting argument that if you dress up, a lot of times people act more appropriately. So if you're a city employee, and I mean this is different than if you're in public works and you're out in the field and different things, but we tend to buy nice trucks for our employees to use and different things. And I think it makes sense that our employees, I don't think you have to be, in tuxedos or any of that stuff, but I think if you look clean and neat, somehow I think it affects the way you interact with the citizens and the way they treat you. So it's kind of an inherent thing. So I think if we dress up and look nice, and so I tried as much as I can. I didn't wear a tie tonight because I've had kind of a rough day, but I've still got a suit coat and different things on. And so I do it because I respect this office. And I think when people come in here and we're basically, we dress up and the best we can, that it shows respect for the office. And I think that's true for the staff. It shows that you respect your job. Does that make sense? And I'm not being criticized for anybody. Nobody has to look the same, but I think if you look nice, it makes a difference.
Is there something in there you think that we're being too casual in then, Councilmember Smith?
No, I agree with what. I think Doug Courtney's concern was it's getting kind of extensive, and John brought this up, a lot of do's and don'ts. So you may want to take it and kind of generalize it some and say this is standard, but I think you've done a nice job trying to think through this. Obviously, you've done quite a bit of research, and you've done it during the alcohol survey. That's amazing.
Well, that's why it's been going on since July.
She talked. As an employer, we had some issues with some dress with some employees, and it was very uncomfortable addressing a couple of the issues where I thought that everyone would recognize that if the clothes were form-fitting or low cut, that they'd know, and it was really surprising to have to kind of share, hey, that was not appropriate, and it was uncomfortable. And so I do think you have to have some guidelines for those uncomfortable situations that we don't get in them.
And, luckily we've got a great HR professional who I would encourage, if we ever have to have another conversation with employees, for her to be in the room while we have those conversations. Just make it more comfortable and make sure that supervisors don't inadvertently say something inappropriate. Because the last thing I want to do is make employees feel uncomfortable with this. It's really, honestly, I do this so that they don't feel uncomfortable, right? So they understand my expectations, so we don't have to have those conversations, right? And so that the public doesn't feel uncomfortable as well.
Kim, what do you feel? I mean, as a female, I mean, a lot of this, I understand the Levi's might be more of a male situation, but where you're getting into, I haven't seen, and I'm not going to say that the males don't wear leggings or some of that things. This dress code seems to be more geared towards,
Maybe some of the don't, well, not necessarily, but there's, anyway.
What's your perspective on this, Kim?
I guess it's just, what do we want to portray in our city? I have a dress code at the state. I mean, we are allowed to be a little bit more lax on Fridays, but we have to dress pretty professionally at the state. But I mean, there are definitely instances where we have to go to committee meetings or meet with legislative officials just on the whim. So we always have to be prepared for that. I'm fine with the policy. Will I follow it? I don't know.
Okay. Have you gotten your feedback to be able to come back, or do you need more feedback from council?
Nope, I feel good about that. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, that was a discussion item only. We're now going to go to our communication items. We have a number 7A, which is election result timing. And that will be, Stephanie, you're going to kind of share with us a little bit about election results and the timing.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. There have been some questions about the results of our election in regards to the fact that we do have some we have 3 write-in candidates. So I did reach out to the county. Excuse me. They did say that there will be no delay in receiving our election results. We should have our first results shortly after 8 p.m. on election night, which was the 21st, as we all know, not today. And then shortly thereafter, they will be publishing results as they tabulate more. But the reason there's not going to be any kind of a delay, they start counting those and start tabulating those as they come in. So.
But if they're mail, it's what we've traditionally seen, that first night, 8 o'clock, you get it. And from what usually has happened, just like we're going to see in our survey, where Aaron said after you get 100 to 200 in, you start to see a little bit, unless there's some anomaly that's happened late in the election cycle. You'll start to, it pretty well holds true, but then you'll start to see releases. Sometimes they might do it the next day. When do we certify the election now with the dates off?
That's going to be December 5th, so that will be the same day as our city council meeting.
Okay.
They were kind of planning to do the Board of Canvassers meeting at the very beginning of that meeting, maybe right at 7 o'clock, and then move directly into our council meeting.
Okay. Any questions on election timing? We just need to know who's going to be in the finalists.
Can I make just a little observation?
Yes.
My partner that I've worked with for 35 years, and he's usually kind of politically astute in different things, but he told me yesterday, and I was kind of surprised, is he didn't realize until he got the newsletter from the mayor, that anyone was running besides the 3 that are on the ballot. Okay. And it's not the city's responsibility, I guess, to really, but at the same time, what he did is he said, well, they're already in, so he threw his ballot away. And I think that's kind of really interesting. So I don't know if that's happening or not.
I have not heard of any instance other than that, but that's a little bit unfortunate.
I think it's hopefully a unique thing.
Yeah.
I was kind of, and then he said, oh, I maybe should have waited. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of the candidates' bios are on our city's website, so everyone has access to that information with all the candidates,
right,
including the write-ins. So
yeah, I was going to say it includes the write-ins.
Yes, they're all
good.
They're all there. So
yeah, so I thought it was
that's
kinda
unfortunate.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll now move on to the next item, number 7B, is canceled, which is the fire department update. We'll have that at a later date. So we've canceled that, Chief.
But he's here.
The item we were going to discuss will be postponed for a later date. We have our development code changes, which will be Jay and Rob and Andy and all that. Is there some things that you want to discuss on development code changes?
We did rock, paper, scissors, and Andy won, and then he got sick. And then Jay had 2 items already, so they thought I could handle this one. So, this is Brittany's favorite topic. For the council members who've been here for a little bit longer, we've talked about a state law change that happened this year that requires us to essentially overhaul our entire subdivision code and process. This applies to every city and town in Utah, and we're just outlining our process for the new council members. Well, we'll get into it. We go to the next one. I have a clicker. I can do it myself. So this is the timeline of what we're proposing. We're going to be proposing a wide set of changes, and I'll kind of give you a very brief overview in a second. But high-level discussion today, City Council. Next week, we'll take it to Planning Commission to give them the heads up. In the meantime, I'll be writing a lot of code for the city. We'll get the Planning Commission to make a recommendation on it in December, and then we'll ask the council to make a vote on it on January 16th, because per state law, we have to have this in effect beginning February next year. So what are we talking about? Subdivision process change. It used to be under state law, we could do kind of however you wanted to handle your subdivisions. They've changed all that, and basically the council is not part of the approval of any subdivision. This doesn't include any kind of rezone or any kind of development agreement, unique property. This is standard subdivisions coming in under existing zoning will never go to council beginning in January. We have new process timing where we have to review it in certain timeframes. We have to give checklists to applicants. So as part of this, we're overhauling the process for subdivisions, and we have to establish who the approval bodies will be. We can have the preliminary plat for a subdivision be reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. Again, cannot go to council. The final plat cannot go to any public body. It can be approved by staff, or, I'm going to say, we've talked about some options. We had some good discussion today about that. Here's, we have a few questions. Again, as we go to write this, we'll get into a lot more specifics. As we're going to go write this, we wanted to get the council's input. Currently, we have a minor subdivision process. This is for 3 lots or fewer being created out of an existing parcel. It applies when you don't need a new road or any major utilities. Under the new state law, the minor subdivision plat, it's simpler for developers because you can put the preliminary and final plat all to one process. You don't have to do it twice. It's more streamlined. Under the new state law, that means it would come to that final staff review authority once. Our thought was, rather than have it be 3 lots, maybe we'll just limit it down to lot splits. You own 2 acres, you want to make 2 1-acre lots, you're already fronted on road, there's no utilities, maybe that'll be the staff approval. Again, this is kind of what our thinking is. Again, if you have any concerns or input, love to take it as we go to write this. So our thought was, we really narrow what a minor subdivision process is, just really simple lot splits that already have all utilities and roads and other necessary infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier, there still is an open space subdivision code. We're thinking we're still going to leave that in there because it's helpful to have a reference for our existing ones. We'll just tweak it a little bit to say this doesn't really apply to any new process. We're not doing these anymore. We're just leaving it in there as a reference for future review. And then the final thing that we really want to get your input on, who do you want to approve final plats? Again, under state law, it cannot be the council. It cannot be any member of the council. So that means it also cannot be the Planning Commission. It can be staff, or it can be a member of the one or more members of the Planning Commission, so long as it's not a quorum. Staffs, our initial, when we were talking about this, we were thinking we'd maybe have a 3-person body of the city engineer, the city attorney, and the city community development director, so Andy, Jay, and me, because we're going to be involved in the process from the beginning. We'll know when they're done. We'll issue the final decision, the plat's approved. We had a discussion with the mayor. He had an additional suggestion, which I thought was great. Maybe we want to add in the Planning Commission chair and one other member of the Planning Commission, because they'll be reviewing the preliminary plat. So that way they're involved as well, and we end up with a 5-person board to review the final plat. So we still can have a majority vote. So that's kind of my spiel, but what questions do you have?
So the question I have, this only applies to developments where there's no zoning change.
Correct.
The zoning changes will come to us.
Yes.
Right.
So if someone zoned R140 and they want to do an R120 subdivision, we say, that's good. Go talk to the council because that's a rezone. We can't approve that.
But so these are developments that are following the zoning that's already been approved years before.
So here's one that could happen, and maybe the timing will just be right at the very end. We have the Workman property, which is about 20 acres. It's zoned R140. My understanding is that developer wants to, he's not proposing a zone change. It does not come to the council for any approval. It will go to planning commission. And then that will, and if the planning commission approves, they'll put stipulations and it's approved. So Ron and Brittany, those of us have been on the planning commission, it gives a little bit of teeth and a little bit of importance to that planning commission and making sure. And so, but now this is a process of just 3 lots. The 3 lots does not come to planning commission, correct?
So, yes. So the minor subdivision process, currently, it just comes to council. Right now, the final plat all gets combined, comes to you, and you approve it.
But we can't do that now.
You can't do that now, and state law says if you're going to combine the process, you skip the planning commission process. It's not you take it to planning commission, is you skip that preliminary plat, and you instead go to the final plat process. So that's why we were thinking of narrowing it down to, honestly, as staff, we want the planning commission to be involved, so we don't want to handle things that have any risk of being more controversial. So
I do believe the chairman of the planning commission needs to be on your board, or whatever group you call that.
Yes. So I think that's an excellent suggestion. We could write that in there.
I thought 5, because you have 4, just in case you have to have a vote, you could have a 2-2. If you have a 5, you at least have that divide.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we would have 3 staff members and then 2 planning commission members. We'd probably say something like the chair and another designated
Well,
planning
there's
commission
usually a
member. Whoever
vice
can
chair.
show up to it. The
There's
chair can
usually
pick.
a vice chair.
Could be vice chair.
Yeah.
Or whoever they appoint, maybe have the planning commission appoint one
Yeah.
person.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And that way, we're planning on having, what we're probably going to do is we'll probably have like a weekly little meeting where we just review anything that's up, and then we'll issue written decisions for final plats. And our thought is we'd also give reports to the council as part of discussion items saying, so the council's aware, planning commission approved a preliminary plat for this subdivision. So take Workman property. It comes in, it's R140, 20-ish acres. Developer says, I want to put in 20 lots. We say, all right, we've done the math. You can have those lots. Have you met the road requirements? Do we have all of the frontages? Do we have all the lot sizes? Have you met our sensitive lands ordinance? We go through all of that. We say, looks good. Take it to planning commission for preliminary. They put any conditions of approval on it, and then they'll resubmit their final plat, and it'll be a much more internal process in a way. We'll still have a record of decision, but we'd give the council the heads up. Hey, preliminary plat was considered by planning commission for this property. It got approved with some conditions, so you're aware. Just so you know, then we'll do it later, council, so you're aware. I don't know what we're going to call it. We have a DRC, but this is going to be something else. We're going to call it something really good. The really good committee.
The MSC.
What about the
minor subdivision
CCP?
combination.
Has issued a final plat approval for this property, and just give the council updates on that. And of course, the council can attend planning commission meetings because you are still residents of the city. You're welcome to attend the planning commission meetings. And our thought was we'd still hold a public hearing. We're allowed to hold 1 public hearing on the preliminary plat, so we'd continue to do that, continue to issue notices as we have been, give you the heads up, hearings coming up on this if you want to attend, and you're welcome to address things as residents can during that meeting.
So they're at the planning commission level, there'll still be public hearings.
Correct.
Okay.
We hold 1 public hearing. It specifically says state law, you can hold 1. And we will
So
still do
these
that.
new laws were meant to expedite development, so they're, obviously it's pretty apparent.
They're trying
how
to
that
also
came
get
about,
rid of
yeah.
public clamor, where the public comes in, where it's a really more administrative. It's not legislative.
It holds cities to higher standards, saying, hey, cities, if it meets your zoning, approve it. It holds developers to higher standards because I know in many cities that I work with, sometimes a plat will kind of be cycled back and forth for a long time. This says no. Developers, you have 4 chances to get it right, and at the end of the 4th one, you'll get denied if you don't meet code, and you have to start again. It's very clear how this whole cycle is supposed to work.
And they're going to understand that you can't change the zoning.
And they will very much understand. There's nothing we're ever going to do. As soon as they start proposing something that deviates from zoning, that requires a unique development agreement, requires a zone change, they want some kind of PD type
Or
development.
they
we'll
have
say,
a financial situation where the city has to agree to some financial
right,
terms
we're
that
doing
has to come to
something, some unique, we want to exchange property to get some kind of weird development that's unique for them. We say, that's fine, we can consider that, but that's not this process. That means we're going to talk to planning commission for a recommendation and council for approval still, just like with any other land use zoning issue.
So just, and I know this, I don't want to get, but like we brought up the Workman. Workman has trails in there. Is that going to have to come to council because it has some trails dedication they're doing?
No, we're not.
Not if
I mean,
they
we're
agree
still
the
very, very
trails.
preliminary, but with trails, we have an active transportation plan and we have a general plan that outlines trails. If they show all of the connections that are supposed to be there and they say, we agree to put those in as your general plan and active transportation plan shows, we say, great, you've met the zoning code to put in the trails. We don't have a concern with that. If they balk at that, either what will likely happen is either they'll request some kind of development agreement, which will come to council, or it's going to be something where we would have city will keep saying, you're supposed to provide this per our code. They'll say, we're not. We'll say, round 2, provide it. Round 3, provide it. Round 4, provide it. Round 4, you're done. We're going to deny your plat for that reason. So that's how, in a nutshell, this is going to work.
We need to get ahead of this because it's coming in February, correct?
The state law kicks into effect on February. If we don't have our process in place, we're going to hear about it from the developers. So we've been talking about this for a while, so this is your heads up about what we're doing. We want to get some clarification. I appreciate those details. I'm going to start writing a lot of code.
Okay.
So let me just ask a question. We're getting ready to redo our general plan. What if our general plan in that process revises some zoning?
So your general plan won't revise zoning, but you can do that. You often have like a future land use map.
Right.
You change that, you'll then have to go through the normal rezone process to actually change the zone on the zoning map to match the general plan.
Okay.
And if you update the general plan in the meantime, say you realigned some trails or you've designated a street as a collector or from a collector to a local road, when staff goes, we'll look at it, we'll say, okay, our current general plan, now that you've submitted it, requires you to put in this type of roadway. And we'll just incorporate that into our review.
As you go through the general
As we
plan.
go through
Okay.
that.
Great question.
Any other questions about this?
Okay, we'll now move on to number D, which is the system-wide PI, and that will be Jeff.
Mayor, it is 10:14.
Oh, so we need, if we as we look at these last items, we got 3, which is that, the carpet, and sustainability, and we also have a closed session. Do we have a motion to extend council meeting, or are we done?
I'll make a motion to extend it for 10 minutes because I really bad want to hear about the community center carpet and paint.
Okay, Scott's made a motion to extend to 10:25. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, at least the majority said aye. Okay.
So the reason we're bringing this one forward to you guys today is we do have a planned another connection for the Murdoch Canal, for another connection to our pressurized irrigation system. And at this time, we want to receive your input on PI PI filtering throughout the entire system of our.
Are you going to
PI
carpet
system.
it? No.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so Jeff, what you're saying is, hey, right now, the one that's coming by the Miller property is be coming out of the Murdoch Canal, correct?
Yes.
Right.
And that
Yep.
Murdoch Canal traditionally is a little more dirty water. Have you noticed that? Is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, it's a collective. All the water has different variations of debris, silts, and different things. So we're just looking forward before we build this and construct this. Do we want to go down the road of possibly in the future years filtering our entire system?
How much does it cost to add the filters on?
Right now, it would just be modifying the size of the building to accommodate those filters. We wouldn't probably install those filters right now. It would just enlarge the size of the building.
So that
those
you could do it in the future.
Right.
A future budgetary item.
Yes.
I think that's good. I like that.
This
I'm
certainly
worth
isn't a
pursuing.
small price tag what we're talking about. I mean, enlarging the building, right, small, but you know, as we've looked at this is a really big decision that could cost the city millions of dollars, if not tens of millions, ultimately, to filter our entire system. So while this certainly is a first step, know that, I mean, and it doesn't lock us into moving forward, this is a really big change for the city, a really big financial impact. And if it's something you want to do, other cities do it. If it's something Highland wants to do, just know that it does certainly come with a price tag and honestly more staff time monitoring these filters, changing them, you know, fixing the problems that come with them.
What you're saying, though, this building would just be, it'd only be right now the building. We still have to make that decision once we start having financial numbers on the filtering. Is that correct, Jeff?
Right. We are in the process of getting this designed for construction, this building to go out to bid, to bring to you guys at a later date. So right now, we'd like that input from council if they want to go down that path in order to design the proper building or
So
not.
input, council, I think I'd heard from like 3 of you saying yes, is that correct?
Yes, except I'm interested in the infrastructure for electrical, for example. Would it require a different, what would go into that building now versus what would go in once we put the pumps in? Would we have to go like from 200 amp service to 500 amp service, or what? How does that factor in as far as the electrical?
I'm sure there would be some components that would have to be considered with that. Typically, the filters don't require a large amount of power or energy to cycle them and such, but yes, that is something we need to consider. Is the
Yeah,
whole-
just
the
to
whole
factor it
package.
in so that we don't underbuild the infrastructure as we're building the building itself.
Right. Yes.
So council, are you in favor of them moving forward as having this a little bigger so if they wanted a filter, they could?
Yes.
I'm in favor. I'd like to know the cost, though, in the end, and I'm sure you'll come up with an estimate.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just have 3, 4, 5. We're all just move forward on that. Okay, we now have the next one is the community center carpet and paint. I believe we have an update on price.
We do.
We're gonna make
So
it nice
on-
so people want to go there now, Scott.
That's right.
I do have a date for you now. So the painting is scheduled for that first week in January. So that's as soon as we could get in, considering all of the Christmas concerts we have coming up there. We needed about a week to paint in there. So, and that is within what we have budgeted there. The budget we've gotten for carpet is unfortunately not what we have in budget. So we don't need to make this decision tonight, but council, I need you to start thinking about before I contract this forward, I need to know how we're going to pay for it. So we have $6,000 budgeted on this. We could use general fund reserves to get this done. Or another consideration, each of you have $3,000 per year that you're.
We do?
Last year we didn't do that.
Last didn't have it
you
last
didn't.
year?
This year
I
you
would say
added
take
back
it out of
in.
the general fund because we haven't made a decision about if we'll have that again or not.
No, this year you put it in. Last year fiscal year 23, it got taken out. Fiscal year 24 that we're in currently,
back in.
it got put back in.
I'll donate mine towards this.
There you go.
Him and I have to buy Christmas lights. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's probably too late.
Because
I
the
will
Christmas
put
lights
my
would be a lot
3,000
bigger.
Do I have 3 or 6?
You have 3.
Okay, I'll put my 3 with Scott, and we have now funded with our budgets.
Almost all of it.
All
Yes,
the carpet.
almost all of it. I just need
Can
6,000
we get a
more
monument
ish.
there?
No, but
Yes.
they can look out the window, standing on a nice carpet, looking at the Christmas lights. So it's a win-win.
So it's, you're right. I'm not doing math correctly. 12, 14. You're right. So I have, yes. Okay. All right. I have 12,000. At this point, we'll plan on taking the rest out of reserves unless another council member tells me they want to use their 3,000.
Yeah, Ron says he'll donate his.
Oh, they're holding it.
Oh, they're holding on to it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. And we're super excited to show you new paint and carpet close after there to
I
follow.
got a question. You had 6,000 because you already had
Right.
3 and 3 from me and Scott the years past.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and is it? And I guess you're
And
doing.
we
the
just gave
carpet-
another 6.
You're right. So I don't need much more at all, right? So 12,000, 14,000. So now I have 12,000. I only need 2,000.
One more
Rest.
council member's 2,000.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, we'll now move on to the next item. We have about 4 minutes on it. Sustainability initiatives. Aaron Wells.
Super brief. What was his name?
Oh.
Sorry. A gentleman emailed the council a couple times about sustainability and wondering what we do. Truthfully, Mayor and Council, I mean, of course, we offer. Can you go to the next slide? Just help me remember what I wrote. Of course, we do recycling, offer recycling. We've made some ordinance changes recently, encouraging xeriscaping, actually requiring it in new park strips. Whenever we do construction on a building, we're always considering energy efficiency, but we really don't have a concerted effort, an employee who's focused on that. So if you want to do something there, honestly, I need budget, and I would need an employee to help us in that regard. So really, this was just a touch base. Is that something that council is interested in? Or we could honestly talk about it in next year's budget retreat.
I think that's what we do, talk about it with the budget.
Perfect.
Yes. Thank you.
Ron, did you have anything to say?
Well, I would like to reach out to Riley, whatever his name
Corey
was.
Freeze?
I wish I had it off. I'm great with numbers, horrible with names. And kind of get his ideas in terms of, he says that this is his background. I think we would like to hear from him. At least I would like to hear from him. And I'd like to do that before the budget cycle. Corey Freeze, that's it. And ask Corey to come and give us a little 10-minute presentation about his vision of what we can do as a city and what variables we have that we can control and do better. Just to hear his perspective, and I can do that if the council's willing.
So it'd be a 10-minute presentation, probably not the 16th of January.
No, I think we got enough
Maybe
there.
it's good for Ron to meet with him beforehand and kind of council member and kind of get an idea what he's thinking and things. And
If
then
you'll
bring
go
it
with
to
me,
us.
Brittany.
Happy to.
But
Okay.
that way, if you guys that way you can kind of see what is some of the ideas, and you can see, hey, is there a lot
Yeah.
of expense, or does he have good ideas that maybe doesn't have a lot of budget?
Very good, very good.
Okay.
I like that.
Okay, with that, we're now at the end of our meeting. We do have a motion for closed
Actually,
session.
Mayor, I've got a couple other quick things that won't take long at all. Things that you're going to care about.
Oh, yeah.
Mountain Ridge. Okay, next slide for me. Schedule. We are really, really hoping that we're going to be able to open the week of Thanksgiving right before, but I won't know for sure until Thursday. On Thursday, I will let you know what our schedule is looking like. And we are planning a donor day ahead to invite all of those who have donated and their families to come and kind of preview the park before we do our grand opening. Next, donation, fundraising.
Yes.
We have the letter ready. We have the addresses ready. Wes is making one final change for me on this, on the beautiful flyer you see, and then it's going out. So it is imminently going to be in mailboxes. Thank you for those who got me new addresses.
So when does this go out again?
Wes, when does this go out? Done. So honestly, if we could, my goal, I would love to get it out this week.
Aaron, okay, guys, like when we say we're looking at the morning of Wednesday the 22nd at 10 a.m. to do a little soft grand opening of the park if all of the stuff comes together. I actually stopped by there this morning or this afternoon, and there is some. They don't have, like I said, they don't have the pavilions up. They don't have the cement for the pavilion.
It all depends on if concrete gets poured tomorrow. That's the big point that we're waiting on. So if that can happen, then everything else can get done.
Okay, we'll talk about testers.
It's raining today. Oh, is it?
What? We're shooting for the morning of the 22nd. The reason we thought we'd have it in the morning, they could play that afternoon, and we'd have it open for Thanksgiving.
I know that it's not ideal to do it right before Thanksgiving, and people will be traveling, people won't be able to attend, but we're worried the later we get, the less likely it is we're going to be able to do this. So you pick a date and do it.
Wes, thank you for all your work on
Yes,
this.
thank you.
Thank you, Wes.
Now, there is a donor's letter going out. And some of the council members, we're going to need to have some calls out just as follow-up to some of those we've mailed and just saying, hey, I don't know if you saw this, we just want to let you be aware. And then that's where some of the conversations about what they might want to donate for and get it kind of put together.
A council member approached me about potentially changing the date of our Christmas party. So dates that I know that all of our staff members are able to be there are up on the screen for you. So we had originally planned it as December 7th, but I'm wondering if the 11th or the 13th would also work for the rest of the council.
What days of the week are those?
That's a Monday and a Wednesday.
Okay, December 11th.
7th is a Thursday,
Oh, you're right. The 7th is a Thursday, and that does not work for a council member, so we're wondering if the 11th or the 13th would work for everybody else.
13th is, at this time, there's something with MAG on the 13th. There's actually, MAG has a major vote on the 7th and the 13th. I would be flexible. If we could do the 11th, it'd be easier for my schedule.
Right, I would like the 11th.
I can do the 11th. Kim, pressure's on.
11th, is that a Monday?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, council Christmas party, December 11th.
John and Ron, you're in charge of entertainment. It's going to be so fun.
You're going to love it.
I can't wait.
Are you guys pairing up? I love it.
No, I just made that up.
Actually,
That's
no,
not a
I already
thing.
gave that assignment to Ron, so, but I like the idea of throwing John in there too.
We're going to start, what time would that be at, like 6?
When
Normally
she
we-
says Ron, she really means Kelly.
He's not lying.
Okay, write it down.
We normally do it at 6:30, dinner at 7, kind of do mingling.
Okay, that's great. We found a date. Okay, here's your future meetings here. We got Public Safety next Wednesday morning. We got Planning Commission on the 28th. We have our next City Council meeting will be on the 5th of December. And then on the 2nd will be a swearing in. So our only meeting in December will be the 5th. Now we're going to have on the 11th a Christmas party. And then we have on January 2nd, we'll have a swearing in ceremony. And then in January, if the council, we are considering doing a council retreat to kind of go through some goal setting, maybe playing some games. I mean, it's just, we're going to be a little new council, maybe having some game playing. We'll have, some things that way, and then we'll kind of do some strategizing and major planning. And we'll get that, that'll probably be in January towards the mid to end.
Is there a way to do the swearing in on January 2nd? Or not on January 2nd? Because kids don't go back to school until January 8th. So that might.
So really? Stephanie, we've got to do it as soon as we can in January, but what's the state code restrictions there?
Oh, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're supposed to be sworn in around the first Monday of the year.
So would that
like at noon, I think is the state code it's kind of specific. Yeah.
That's not set in stone yet. That's kind of what we were thinking. Honestly, we didn't think we should hold a full council meeting that day.
Well, and
because
then
it
we're
was
gonna
the
adjust,
second.
then on the first week of December, we're going to look at that. But tentatively, we're saying January 16th is our first council meeting in 2024.
Why couldn't we swear in on the 8th? I mean, not the 8th. But
On the 9th or something. Yeah,
because that
Rob,
swearing in
look at
ceremony
code.
is pretty short.
If all offices are vacated at noon on the first Monday in January following the election. So as of the 1st at noon, we may not have a council until they're sworn in.
Are we really concerned? No. Do we normally swear in people noon on that Monday? No. So I don't think it's, essentially, we just don't have you sworn in. We won't have the new council sworn in until January 9th, but hopefully nothing explodes in that first week. And even if it did, it would be okay.
So are we thinking the 9th now?
If that works, if that's better for you guys, I don't have a concern.
Because on the 1st, I should have a little more. I could see.
Right.
It's a weird school break this year.
Mhm.
Like, what are we going to do with that whole week with my children? I hope the park is ready.
No, the 9th is a Tuesday.
And then we do the swearing in, but we still have our council meeting.
On the 16th, and then honestly, we'd probably do our budget session really close thereafter, right around that time. So the first part of January is going to be great.
So, Rob, everything's vacated on the first day of January. Is that right?
By state law, as noon on the first Monday following election, everyone who's not continuing in office, their offices are vacated.
So could the mayor, Ron, and I meet and take care of the alcohol ordinance on the 2nd?
Don't put that out there. I'm trying to
And make it quick.
How come there was only 3 of them? We had Okay, if there's no other items, guys, we do have a closed session. Our closed session will be pertaining to legal matters and also an employee issue. So I need a motion to go into closed session.
We have to have a motion. No, I guess we don't close this yet, then, do we?
Yeah, no, but I have a motion to go.
Just to go in the closed session.
No, we'll
No.
come back.
You're
out.
just
We'll adjourn the
recessing.
meeting after the closed session.
Wait. Motion to go into closed session
For why?
for legal reasons.
An employee.
An employee.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Kim, second by Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
We are now in closed session.
So
Meet in
this
the very
just
back
shows
room.
that Kim is not transparent.